Surely you won't want to die under the flames in the forest, right? Do you know how terrifying it is to be burnt to death? The flames will slowly burn every inch of your skin and you will also breathe in the smoke and ashes, then your vocal cords be muted such that you won't even be able to call out for help, and finally you can only roll around in pain from being burnt alive. Zhuo Fangping had depicted the scenario to be extremely disgusting, in bid to scare Huang Yueli out. From his view, this kind of death was the most disgusting way to die. Even those tenacious top exponents were not able to bear with this torment. In that case, a lass like Huang Yueli would definitely be scared out of her wits. Unfortunately, even after he had depicted such a disgusting scenario, there were still no movements in the forest. Zhuo Fangping gritted his teeth and yelled, "Not coming out, is it? I'll give you one more chance. I'll count backwards from 10. When I'm done, if you still don't appear in front of me, then you can just wait to become a piece of roasted meat. You can also listen on." Zhuo Fangping's hysterical threats had reverberated through the forest and clearly passed on to Huang Yueli's ears. Although she was in a state of fake death, but that did not mean that she was oblivious to the surrounding changes. On the contrary, although she looked exactly like a dead person, but her soul trace was extremely clear and her 5 senses were abnormally sensitive. Towards what was happening in the outside world, she was even clearer than usual. Zhuo Fangping's threats had indeed sounded horrifying, and if it had been any other ladies, they would probably have been scared out of their wits. No matter which practitioner, if they were to meet their demise while training, no one would want to be burnt into a piece of tender roasted meat, right? This way of dying was just too disgusting, and a tad too frightening. Besides that, Huang Yueli also believed that Zhuo Fangping was capable of doing that. In the high-level practitioner's eyes, low-leveled practitioners' and normal humans' lives were not lives. It was no different from any beasts. In a place like Soaring Heaven's continent where might was highly valued, there were quite a number of people who still believed in this view. However, Huang Yueli was one who wasn't afraid of those type of people. Because of her flame spirit physique, she don't believe that any flames would be able to hurt her in any way. Even if it was the number 1 deviant flame, true phoenix fire, hadn't it be easily refined by her? As for other ordinary flames, even if it could start a prairie fire and burnt her body, but it would not be able to hurt her one bit. So if Zhuo Fangping really intended to set fire on her, then it would be a good thing. Because once the fire was started, the scenario would definitely be in a huge mess. Once a forest fire lit up, it would be extremely hard to extinguish it. By then, Zhuo Fangping would definitely assume that she's dead and would not need to make too much verification, and all she had to do was to wait for Zhuo Fangping to leave before she could quietly leave the scene of fire. To Huang Yueli, this was simply the best way to escape from this scenario. So Huang Yueli had been secretly mumbling to herself, quickly burn, you better quickly set fire." If Zhuo Fangping was able to hear her inner thoughts, he would probably be driven mad on the spot. The threat that he had thought to be extremely horrifying and abnormal was actually able to help Huang Yueli. Moreover, she had been praying non-stop that he could quickly use such a sinister method on her. What was the problem here? To torture one person was naturally to make her afraid, then only would the tormentor feel good. But the other party was not afraid and was excitedly hoping for it, then there would be no meaning at all. Huang Yueli operated the cultivation method, and at the same time, she looked forward to Zhuo Fangping setting fire. However, not knowing if Zhuo Fangping had found his consciousness or what, he finally did not set fire. Huang Yueli waited for a long time, but there was no signs of movement, so she gauged that he had probably given up the decision to set fire in the forest, and couldn't help but feel disappointed. At the same time, she started to be on her guard. Zhuo Fangping would probably not give up at this moment in time, but if he chose not to set fire, then it would mean that he must have found another sure-win way to force her to appear, and what method would it be? Huang Yueli waited and waited, until she almost lost her patience. From the outside of the woods reverberated a sharp shriek. "You, who are you? What are you intending to do? Let me go, help. Bo-hoo-hoo." That voice sounded like it was filled with shivering and choking and sounded slightly familiar. Huang Yueli was stunned for a moment and realized that this was her cousin Bai Ruo Chi's voice. "You can also listen on." Immediately following that, Zhuo Fangping's voice could be heard again. Shut up, stupid girl. If you continue crying, I'll stab you to death. No tilde tilde tilde, don't kill me, don't kill me. Bai Ruoqi kept begging for mercy as she sat paralyzed on the ground, holding tightly onto Zhuo Fangping's thigh as she begged, I won't cry, so whatever you want me to do, I'll do it. Please don't kill me. Zhuo Fangping kicked her aside, scram further aside. Let me ask you, that Bai Ruoli, is she your cousin? Related by blood? Bai Ruoqi knew this was her exponent who would claim her life just by a raise of his hand and shivered with fright. Not daring to hide anything, she hurriedly answered once Zhuo Fangping raised his question. Right, it's exactly as you said. Bai Ruoli's father is my father's blood brother. It's absolutely true. But since I was young, Bai Ruoqi wanted to mention that since young, she had been on loggerheads with this third cousin and both of them were not on the same path, so rather than saying that they were relatives, it would be more apt to say that they are enemies and had completely shed all pretense of cordiality. So when Zhuo Fangping wanted to create trouble for Huang Yueli, it really wouldn't implicate her because she held the same wishes that Huang Yueli would quickly die. However, Zhuo Fangping had no patience to listen to her, and after he had gotten the answers he wanted, he dragged Bai Ruoqi aside. Enough, I know already. Bai Ruoqi wished to speak but did not do so on second thought after she caught Zhuo Fangping's murderous stare, not daring to open her mouth at all. Zhuo Fangping dragged Bai Ruoqi into the forest and shouted loudly towards the inner part, Bai Ruoli, come out now. If you don't, I will kill your cousin. Moreover, I will also cut off her fingers individually and let you hear her painful, anguished wailing. You better consider carefully. Bai Ruoqi was terrified till she almost fainted. It was obviously that little slut who lured the enemy, so even if she died, she deserved it. Why? Why did it implicate her? The forest was still in a state of silence. Zhuo Fangping frowned and reiterated again, Bai Ruoli, have you considered clearly? This is your blood-related cousin, considered to be your blood skin. Are you going to let her, in your face, be tortured alive until she dies? Can you get past your conscience? Don't tell me you will not be pricked by your conscience and have a nightmare tonight. There was still no movements in the forest. Zhuo Fangping was afraid that Huang Yueli could not hear him, hence he repeated himself once again. However, not only did Huang Yueli heard it, but when she heard, she found it especially amusing. This Zhuo Fangping was here to harm her or to help her. If he really slowly tortured Bai Ruoqi to death slowly, not only will Huang Yueli not feel sorrowful, instead she will feel ecstatic. Trying to use such a scheme to force her to show herself. It would only have the opposite effect, okay? As for Bai Ruoqi, please feel free to slowly torture her and don't stand on ceremony. After you're done with the torture, please scram as soon as possible. Zhuo Fangping didn't get any response and his eyebrows creased as he secretly felt a shock in his heart. This lass, although she was very young, but her psychological quality was pretty good. He had already dragged her cousin here and yet there was no activity from her at all. Actually, Zhuo Fangping had not expected Huang Yueli to listen to his threats and just run out in stupor. But when most people had their blood relatives captured, they would not be completely silent. You can also listen on. No matter how calm one may look, there would be that one instance that their bodies would become stiff and slight changes would occur to the frequency of their breathing. What Zhuo Fangping was hoping for was that instance of abnormality. As long as Huang Yueli had that one little bit of being disturbed, she would easily display some loopholes and he would be able to use that to ascertain a rough estimate of her hiding place. Once he was able to locate her, then capturing her would not be a big issue. However, reality had disappointed Zhuo Fangping. There was no slight change in breathing frequency in Huang Yueli, as though his capturing of Bai Ruoqi had no effect or response from her. Wretched lass, stop pretending, she is your blood cousin. I heard that you were raised by your uncle, how could you be so heartless to your cousin? All right, your heart is made of steel, isn't it? Then I won't stand on ceremony. Saying that, Zhuo Fangping raised Bai Ruoqi with one hand and held tightly onto her slender hand, as though he was gently caressing her. TSK, this cousin of yours looks not bad at all, youthful and smooth skin, and this pair of hands are especially beautiful. If I were to slash off her fingers one by one, this scenario, what would it be like? Bai Ruoqi's soul had flown out of her body and her expression was even paler than a dead person as she trembled like a leaf and almost wet her pants on the spot. Zhuo Fangping pressed her hand on the ground and raised his sword with his right hand, about to slash downwards. Bai Ruoqi shrieked, "No, please, don't cut my finger. Even if you were to slash me into 100 pieces, it would be useless. Although this slut and I are cousins, but we are more like enemies and she can't wait for me to die. If you killed me, she would be ecstatic. She won't show herself at all." She knew, if she didn't say anything at this time, she would definitely die, so she couldn't care less and started screaming. Sure enough, after hearing what she said, Zhuo Fangping's movement paused. Bai Ruoqi's heart soared with joy as she felt that her words had taken effect. She hastily added, "It's true, I've been bullied by that slut daily and I've bore hatred against her for the longest time and I want her life as well. Since you're also Bai Ruoli's enemy, that makes our target the same, so we are on the same side. Sir, please let me off and I'll help you find that slut." Zhuo Fangping stared at her for a moment, trying to gauge if what she had said was true. Bai Ruoqi displayed an earnest expression towards Zhuo Fangping and said, "Sir, I swear that all I had said are the truth." Zhuo Fangping replied sinisterly, "Oh? Really? Then what proof can you show that you're telling the truth?" Bai Ruoqi was stumped. Her? Proof? On seeing Zhuo Fangping's fallen expression, she hastily replied, Right. You want proof, I have proof. That is, those people with me on the carriage, they all know me and Bai Ruoli, and know that we have an enmity. If you were to ask, then you can find out for sure." Zhuo Fangping faced an icy smile. "That's wasting too much time. Besides, they're all in cahoots with you. Who knows if you'd gang up to lie to me? Be you." But Bai Ruoqi wanted to add on more but was stopped by Zhuo Fangping. "To find out if what you're saying is the truth or not, it's very simple." Saying that, he pressed down Bai Ruoqi's hand and without any hesitation, the long sword on the other hand had already swerved downward. Blood spurted out. "tilde. You can also listen on." Bai Ruoqi let out a shrilling shriek as her little finger on her left hand was cut off. Filled with bloodstains, she fell onto the grass. Pain filled her entire face as it contorted with pain, wishing that she could start rolling around on the grass patch. However, Zhuo Fangping gripped her hand tightly, so no matter how Bai Ruoqi struggled, she couldn't get away from him. Beads of perspiration which had formed on her forehead started to slide down from her face. She had never suffered such pain in her lifetime, and yet, now a part of her body was cut off from her while she was still alive. Furthermore, this mysterious exponent was extremely fast and ruthless without any hesitation. He was simply too scary. Zhuo Fangping couldn't be bothered to even cast her a glance but simply continued shouting towards the direction of the forest. "Bai Ruoli, did you hear that? Your cousin's one finger is gone. TSK, such a beautiful hand and it's not broken, such a waste. Even I also feel some sympathy." His tone was deep and low as he laughed chillingly. Huang Yueli had heard it but she didn't show any expression, just laughing inside her heart. What she liked most was this kind of self-professed genius, right? This was known as dog bite dog, double-crossing each other, and all these were what they were willing to do. Wasn't that just too amusing? Zhuo Fangping didn't get the response that he had expected and his expression instantly grew gloomier by the second. He raised his long sword and under the terrified face of the shocked Bai Ruoqi, he struck down hard again. Tilde. Bai Ruoqi gave another shrilling shriek, incomparably mournful, shocking a little birds which had perched on the tree branches started to fly away in all directions. However, Huang Yueli still did not give any response. Zhuo Fangping turned around and yelled again, "Bai Ruoli, this is already the second finger. If you still don't come out, all of your sister's 10 fingers will be gone. In future, I'm afraid she will have to use her leg to have her meals." Use her leg to have her meals. Just thinking about this scenario almost made Bai Ruoqi faint. However, Zhuo Fangping continued to grip her hand tightly. That continuously rising pain was just too distinct, so much that she could not even faint if she wanted to. The forest was still in a state of inactivity. Zhuo Fangping shut his eyelids as his face was downcast, his lips pursed tightly, not making any sound. Bai Ruoqi was so frightened that her heart almost stopped, as though days were like years. Zhuo Fangping had already said his sharpest words, but he hadn't taken any action. This period of waiting was in fact the most torturous to anyone's mind, because the horrifying scenario that she had imagined could happen at the next moment, whereas she was totally unable to handle it. Just thinking about it was able to make her die from fright. Zhuo Fangping went into deep thoughts for a moment and suddenly let go of Bai Ruoqi's hand. Bai Ruoqi could not react in time, as her hand still maintained the same position on the ground, not knowing if she should retract it. She dumbfoundedly stared at Zhuo Fangping. "Sir. Please spare my life," Zhuo Fangping replied icily. "Bai Ruoli really doesn't give a hoot about you. Looks like what you said earlier was the truth." Yes, it's the truth. Whatever I had said are all the truth." It was until this moment that Bai Ruoqi finally realized that Zhuo Fangping had been so heavy-handed just because he was authenticating if she and Bai Ruoli were really enemies. Bai Ruoqi had never expected that this top exponent in front of her would be so sinister. In order to authenticate the truth, he took 2 of her fingers away. Bai Ruoqi felt indignant and uncomfortable, but she did not dare to grumble even a single word. "You can also listen on." Zhuo Fangping continued to speak. "Since you and Bai Ruoli are indeed not on the same path, then I'm not an unreasonable person. Your remaining fingers, I don't want it anymore." "Why, yes." Bai Ruoqi's hatred was filled to the brim, but her expression actually showed a blandish expression as she spoke, quivering. Many thanks, sir. I'm grateful to you for sparing me." Huang Yueli almost laughed out when she heard that. She was undoubtedly an innocent bystander captured and had suffered the loss of 2 fingers, but not only did Bai Ruoqi not show her rage, but she even meekly thanked the person who hurt her. There was no greater grievance than this. Grateful? Grateful to that killer for what? Grateful to him for cutting off her fingers? Or grateful to him for treating her like a dog? Thinking about Bai Ruoqi's usual arrogant and despotic attitude, bullying the weak and fearing the strong was used to describe the kind of people like her. In Bai Ruoqi's heart, she had indeed felt grieved to the extreme, but she was no fool, knew that since she was already now at the life and death crisis, bearing with this and preserving her life was the most important thing to do. At this moment, she would not hesitate if she had to say or do anything. Zhuo Fangping heard what she said, and the corners of his lips curled upwards slightly. Bai Ruoqi's heart flew in joy, thinking that she might possibly be saved. Now that this merciless demon already knew that she and Huang Yueli were not buddies and had not intended to continue cutting off her fingers, then he would probably not want her life as well. In order to please Zhuo Fangping, Bai Ruoqi added, "Sir, I can help to find Bai Ruoli together with you. Although my power is lowly and I'm not on the same level as you, but one more person means one more strength. I can help you." Zhuo Fangping casted her a glance, and in his eyes, a cold and strange intent flashed by his eyes. Bai Ruoqi's heart shivered, suddenly feeling that things didn't seem so right after all. Just at this moment, Zhuo Fangping suddenly grabbed her collar and lifted her up. Lifted in this manner, the material of her clothes near the collar was restrained deeply onto her neck, causing her to almost suffocate. Bai Ruoqi struggled, but no matter how she tried, she could not set herself free. Her face gradually turned green as she stammered, "Sir, haven't we already cleared the misunderstanding? Please let me go. I am willing to help." Zhuo Fangping gave a chilly laugh. "Since you've already said that, then why are you still struggling? In fact now, only you can help me." Bai Ruoqi hurriedly answered, Yes, I help." Before she could complete her sentence, she suddenly felt a chill near her bosom area. Bai Ruoqi had not realized what had happened, and it was until she saw her clothes at her bosom area seeped with blood before she realized that this sinister man had used his sword to slash open her chest. You, Bai Ruoqi's voice quivered. Zhuo Fangping didn't pay any attention to her, and presumptuously he took out a talisman from his chest area and shook it in mid-air. The array pattern on the talisman shone slightly, and following that, the talisman stopped in mid-air as the array pattern started to be activated, shimmering with strange rays. Bai Ruoqi was covered in sweat, but she was unable to move an inch. She could clearly feel that her blood kept pouring out, and this blood were gradually consolidating towards the talisman. The talisman absorbed her blood and slowly congealed. The array pattern on the talisman slowly became darker and darker, until finally, it turned into a striking blood-red color. You can also listen on. Huang Yueli hid behind the tree, and although her breath was restrained to the slightest degree, she was still able to clearly hear the surrounding sounds. Bai Ruoqi and Zhuo Fengping's conversation naturally would not escape her ears. Following that, after Bai Ruoqi moaned a few times and her qi turned thin like a gossamer, there was no more sound. Isn't that just too strange? Instinct told Huang Yueli that the person who was after her should have thought of another new method, and the more terrifying part was because it's not any ordinary method. In her heart, a sudden crisis filled her heart. Just at this moment, a bloody stench filled the air all the way till her corner. When Huang Yueli smelled this blood stench, the alarms in her heart starting ringing non-stop, and she suddenly recalled something that made her heart thump wildly. Alas, it was all too late. Zhuo Fengping held the talisman in his hand, and looking at the blood imprint that had formed a bond with the talisman, his lips curled into a sinister smile. Whereas by his feet, Bai Ruoqi had already entered a state of shock due to excessive blood loss as the whites of her eyeballs flipped over and she lay paralyzed on the ground, losing all consciousness. The talisman in his hand was something that he had obtained many years ago in a mystic region which he was training in, and was extremely valuable. The blood-smelt talisman was a god relic used as a tracking device. No matter how high the practitioner's cultivation was, they were unable to conceal their presence in front of the powerful blood-smelt talisman. The only thing was, in order to use this talisman, the limiting conditions were pretty large as well. On one hand, it needed at least a 5th-degree realm cultivator, and on the other hand, it required a special primer to activate it that was the blood from a kin. Moreover, it required a huge amount of blood, almost to the extent of drawing out the entire body's blood. When Zhuo Fengping captured Bai Ruoqi, he had already prepared 2 plans. If Huang Yueli were to worry about Bai Ruoqi being tortured and automatically show up, that would be the best option. However, if she was not going to give in, then he still had another method. And that was to activate this precious blood-smelt talisman. Under the power of this talisman, how would a 2nd-degree realm practitioner like her possibly have the ability to hide? Once the blood imprint of the talisman had been set into shape, the clear blood red was especially striking to one's eye. Zhuo Fengping felt a heartache as he looked at the blood imprint on the talisman. The people who could refine this blood-smelt talisman were extremely little, and with every single use, there would be one lesser. To use this on a 2nd-degree realm trash was a waste. However, in order to show off himself in front of Murong Fei, he was ready to give his best. Zhuo Fengping threw out a talisman seal and pointed towards the sky. The talisman started to move in the windless sky and drifted outwards. Zhuo Fengping's eyes shone as his lips curled up into a frosty smile. Bai Ruoli, you little slut, aren't you really good at hiding? Aren't you very capable? Now, aren't you going to show your true self? I'd like to see, where are you going to hide this round? How many tricks do you have up your sleeves, and are you going to make your escape? Huang Yueli gritted her teeth as she hid behind the tree. Her mind was speedily thinking of ways to counterattack. She felt that she was really unlucky, who had expected that she had almost fooled Zhuo Fengping, and yet he had to bring out a thing like the blood-smelt talisman. Both Bai Ruoqi and her are real cousins, and their blood bond were not something that any cultivation method could conceal or diminish. Because of that, with this blood-smelt talisman, her whereabouts would definitely be exposed. You can also listen on. Once her whereabouts were exposed, even if Huang Yueli wanted to escape, it would become something unrealistic. Run, her speed was not enough. Hide, she had already been exposed. And if she were to fight, she was definitely not Zhuo Fengping's match. No matter how highly intelligent Huang Yueli was, at this moment, she could not think of any way to escape. It just took several moments before the blood-smelt talisman floated to a distance no further than 10 meters near Huang Yueli, and suddenly it stopped. Huang Yueli knew she could not hesitate any further. It was unavoidable to be exposed, and what she could do, or only do, was the last struggle before death. No matter what, she could not let the opponent capture her easily. She suddenly stretched out her hand and in return, started sucking all the profound energy frantically. Profound energy was being absorbed back into her body, and that blood-smelt talisman was also sucked over. Her fingers pinched the talisman and, trembling slightly, she tore the talisman to pieces. The blood floating in the middle of the air had yet to disperse as it turned into a puddle of blood and totally absorbed into her body. Following her action, Zhuo Fangping let out a oof moan. The talisman technique that he used to control the talisman was broken by Huang Yueli, and almost instantly, he suffered yet another backlash. The internal injury within his body took another serious turn. After Huang Yueli absorbed the bloody mist, she felt a scorching warm sensation scourging through every single one of her meridians, and as a divine light appeared in front of her, in that instant, her cultivation was raised to third-degree spirit profound realm instantly. However, Huang Yueli knew clearly that this was just a temporary condition. It was because of the blood from the same lineage had been absorbed into her body and temporarily spiked the potential within her. As her elder cousin, Bai Ruo Qi was at least of some use to her. However, since this condition only temporarily raised her battle power and not a real advancement, so it would not last for too long. Huang Yueli was unable to continue hiding, and gradually her silhouette showed up in the mist. Zhuo Fangping was just suffering a backlash at the moment that she had appeared. She jinked and used her most powerful profound skill, with both hand outstretched, true phoenix fire and amethyst thunder flame lit from her palms at the same time and detonated in the wind. The two types of flames intersected each other and let out an acute exploding sound. Thunder and fire occurred simultaneously, causing everything within 2 kilometers of the forest surroundings to completely explode into level ground. Even Zhuo Fangping had not expected this and was caught in the explosion. At the same time, Huang Yueli did not dare to hide her inadequacy by remaining silent. Instead, she gave all she had got and took out all her attack series profound armaments. Even Little Phoenix and Little Vulture were released, aiding her in attacking Zhuo Fangping. Initially, Zhuo Fangping was set back, but very quickly he reacted and instantly counterattacked. "Wretched lass, where did you learn such profound skills from? Your power isn't too bad at all. However, you're just a second-degree realm practitioner, so even if the heaven-level upper-quality profound skill falls into your hands, don't even think about being able to bring into play a high percentage of power. And don't even think that you can defeat me." Although he cut a sorry figure and had sustained several wounds, but when Huang Yueli noticed that his 4 limbs were still complete as he rushed out from the blazes, her heart had already turned cold. The distance between second-degree realm and fifth-degree realm was still too huge. Even if she had used all her might in that one strike and had already reached the outstanding power of a 4th-degree realm peak, in the eyes of any powerhouse, she was still an unimaginable peerless genius. Alas, it was still not enough. Was she really going to fall head first this time? She finally had a chance to reincarnate into this lifetime, so the things that she wanted to do had not yet been completed. She had not even managed to see Mu Chengying, and she was going to die in such a manner in the hands of a sinister villain? You can also listen on. The glow in the forest grew larger as sounds of an intense battle fell incessantly on the ear. Imperial Tutor and Li Shuer had awoken from their concussion and were struggling to get up. They hid a distance away but did not dare to run too far off. Bai Ruo Qi had been taken away by that grim hit man, and although they all saw this, but they didn't dare to stop him. The reason was because even if they stopped him, it would be useless as that man was just too strong. In front of Zhuo Fangping, they only had that little bit of power which just wasn't enough, so if they were to confront him, it would only be sending themselves to their own deaths. In the face of danger, Imperial Tutor and Li Shuer had agreed by chance and choose to out their own safety before principles. Both of them kept their eyes shut, pretending to still be in comatose, thereby allowing Bai Ruo Qi to be taken away. Following that, Bai Ruo Qi's blood-curdling screech came reverberating from the forest. They were absolutely horrified by her screams, and in their hearts, a sense of guilt arose. They wondered what did that cruel expert did to Bai Ruo Qi. This, if she were to die, what should they do? Because of this, they didn't walk too far away but had hidden themselves and gazed afar, thinking that if Bai Ruo Qi had died, they could retrieve her body when the killer had left. At least they would be able to give an answer to the people at the valiant martial manor. Yet, after the waves of screeches, the forest returned to its usual tranquility. Just as both of them exchanged strange glances, suddenly sounds of battle started to fill the forest. Furthermore, from the occasional reproving noise that the young lady made, the person whom Zhuo Fangping crossed hands with seemed to be Huang Yueli. The two of them heard a loud explosion and saw smoke sprouting from the forest as it filled the entire sky with red flames. They exchanged glances involuntarily, and from each other's eyes, they could spot an incomparable shocking expression. That couldn't be. Bai Ruoli fighting with that expert, right? No. Surely it can't be. I also feel that it's impossible. She's just in second-degree realm, but besides her, who else is there in this forest? But, it's not possible. How can this be possible? With that little bit of cultivation, how can she possibly cross hands with a fifth-degree realm practitioner? Surely if he unleashed a little bit of profound energy, he should be able to shock her to death, right? Yes, this is just too abnormal. The more both of them thought, the more weirder it became and the more terrified they got. Especially when they recalled the provocations that they had thrown onto Huang Yueli during the entire journey, there was always a lingering fear in their hearts. Luckily they didn't really got into a brawl, otherwise, perhaps even Imperial Tutor was not her match. After a while longer, the battle sounds in the forest started to die down. Li Shuai stared blankly at the direction of the forest and spoke out, This is the end. Who won? Imperial Tutor's brows creased as he retorted, Do you even need to ask? The killer must have won. No matter how powerful Bai Ruoli is, can she possibly win a fifth-degree realm expert? This round, Imperial Tutor's guess wasn't wrong. The disparity between fifth-degree realm and second-degree realm was simply too large. Even though Huang Yueli had integrated Bai Ruoqi's blood essence and temporarily broken through to third-degree realm, and the profound skills and cultivation methods came out one after another, but her profound energy was not as much as Zhuo Fangping. Even though both of them were unable to gain an upper hand and had tussled for quite a while, but not long after, Huang Yueli could feel the profound energy in her body was like river water flowing out from the gates, gushing out rapidly to a loss. It didn't take much time before she felt her physical strength was unable to hold on much longer as she fell into a disadvantageous position. You can also listen on. As time passed, Huang Yueli's profound energy was finally exhausted completely. She had no other choice but to jump out, and raising both her hands, she said, all right, I surrender. I've admitted defeat, okay? When Zhuo Fangping heard her admitting her defeat, the chilly smile hanging on his lips became even more obvious. Wretched lass, now do you know how powerful I am? Why didn't you surrender earlier? Or beg for mercy? Now you're showing this tricks. Don't tell me you're trying to delay for more time. But no matter how you try to delay, no one will come and save you. Today, you're a goner. Huang Yueli's mouth twitched as she thought to herself that this killer had some brains instead of all brawn, and could tell what her motive was. She had automatically begged for mercy, not because she was naive and thought that he would let her off because she begged. She just didn't want to be struck dead in the intense battle upon one strike or her meridians severed. If that was the case, then there would be no way of going back. There wasn't any life-threatening injury on her now, so no matter what, while there's life, there's hope. Perhaps she would be able to socialize around with Zhuo Fangping and dupe him. However, Zhuo Fangping was no fool as he saw through her scheme. He gave a cold laugh. If you had not tried to escape from the start, perhaps I can let you have a quick death and not suffer. But you had tried time and again to cause hurt to me, and you even made me lose such a priceless blood-smelt talisman. These cannot be forgotten easily. If I don't torment you till you're half dead, my surname is not. Zhuo Fangping almost spoke out his revered name, and luckily he reacted at the last moment and immediately shut his mouth. Huang Yueli originally pricked her ears to listen, but upon seeing him stop, a sense of disappointment came over her. Zhuo Fangping was filled with embitterment and gloominess. His task today had not been smooth at all, even considered to be a total mess. He had actually suffered such a heavy injury while chasing after a second-degree realm practitioner. This was simply unimaginable. What was worse was the Sect's derby was about to start, and he was initially prepared to show off his skills at the derby, but now that he had suffered an internal injury, by then he probably would have yet to recover from it. This was simply ruining his own future. Not to mention, the blood-smelt talisman that he had wasted was ridiculously expensive. He had counted all of these debts onto Huang Yueli's head count and had decided to torture her viciously, making her wish that she was better off dead than alive. However, even though Zhuo Fangping was despondent, Huang Yueli was in fact even more despondent than him. It was because the blood-smelt talisman that Zhuo Fangping had used to determine her whereabouts was actually refined by her in her past life. In actuality, the number of blood-smelt talisman in the entire Soaring Heavens continent were actually refined by Huang Yueli 20 over years ago. Because of this, no one was clearer than her on the structure and usage of these talisman. This was why she was able to break the blood patterns on the talisman in a blink of an eye and also successfully absorb the blood essence and energy from the talisman. This type of talisman was invented solely by her, and there was none other in Soaring Heavens continent. That year, Mu Chengying was seeking to kill an enemy who excelled at concealment, which was why she helped him to refine this. She refined 30 pieces at one go. Mu Chengying took only 10 pieces and the remaining 20 pieces. Either she sold it off at an auction or she gifted it to friends to return a favor. Never would she had thought that the blood-smelt talisman that she had casually refined years ago would now appear right before her again in such a manner. You can also listen on. Besides that, because of the fact that she had refined it way too successfully, the might of these talisman were very high, and to eradicate the concealment mode was extremely strong, which resulted in her falling head first into this talisman. This was simply a hole which she had dug for herself. Huang Yueli had unspeakable embitterment and gloominess, wishing that she could knock herself dead on the tree trunk. Zhuo Fangping saw her unpredictable expression and had thought that she was afraid, which made him feel delightful. Why? Now you know what is to be afraid. If you were to crouch on the ground and use your tongue to lick my shoes, I can. He opened his mouth with elation, but before he could finish talking, Huang Yueli interrupted his speech. Since I'm going to die soon, can't you let me be an unequivocal ghost? Who wants me dead? Zhuo Fangping was shocked, as he had never expected her to ask this question. But following that, he showed a smile of ridicule. Why? You want to know who wants you dead? Too bad, I'm never going to tell you. You've offended someone whom you shouldn't even had the chance to offend. After you die, think carefully when you've gone down to Hade. Huang Yueli twitched her lips and said, even if you don't tell, I also know. You're Li Moying's foe? When Zhuo Fangping heard Li Moying's name, his eyes turned wide and the expression on his face turned even more malevolent. Li Moying was a name that he really didn't want to hear, because in his inner heart, he was the man who he was most jealous and had the most hatred for. Because such a peerless talent like Li Moying could not be compared to any other talents at all. Before Li Moying had joined the sect, Zhuo Fangping was also one of the many talents in the sect and had obtained the sect master and elders all-out grooming. But all these changed the minute Li Moying came to the sect. In front of that matchless and peerless genius, all others had completely become a prop. No. Perhaps it could be said that they were not even fit to be considered as a prop, because the disparity was simply too large. Not only that, the thing that made Zhuo Fangping most jealous was even the goddess in his heart, Murong Fei, only liked him. If you were to ask who Zhuo Fangping hated the most in his entire life, it would absolutely be Li Moying. However, he didn't dare to show this in the sect, otherwise Li Moying could just crush him to death using just one finger. Zhuo Fangping gritted his teeth as he hissed, how do you know Li Moying? When Murong Fei had asked him to come and kill her, she only mentioned that Huang Yueli had offended her sister Murong Ni, and on a short note, ever mentioned Li Moying's name. After all, Murong Fei was extremely intelligent. She had asked Zhuo Fangping to come and kill his rival in love's fiancé. If Zhuo Fangping were to find out the truth, perhaps he might not be willing to come. After all, if Li Moying was married, Zhuo Fangping would have more chances to get into her heart. So the surprised look on his face was not faked at all. Huang Yueli raised her eyebrow as she observed the expression on his face. When he heard Li Moying's name, the man in front had indeed expressed a vengeance glare. It looked like both of them had some enmity, but he didn't seem to know her relationship with Li Moying. That was weird. If it wasn't because of Li Moying, why would a fifth-degree realm practitioner sort her out and without a word, tried to kill her. In this lifetime, she seemed to not have provoked such a powerful enemy yet. Thinking of this, she suddenly got an idea and thought of the other possibility. Could it be that you're sent here by Murong Fei? You can also listen on. When Murong Fei's name was mentioned, Zhuo Fangping gave a snigger. So, you actually know what bad deeds you had done? Huang Yueli raised her eyebrow as she inquired, what do you mean by that? Murong Fei. What did she say about me? Zhuo Fangping wanted to continue, but he suddenly remembered Murong Fei's instructions that this matter shouldn't be brought up. He forcefully swallowed back his words. Wretched lass, what are you trying to find out by chirping non-stop? I will never tell you who is the one who wants you dead. You can throw whatever schemes you have in your head away and lick my shoes obediently. Zhuo Fangping's face turned more and more sinister as he tried to make a grab for her. Huang Yueli shifted her position in an attempt to avoid him, but as the distance between them were very near to each other and her profound energy had been completely depleted, there was no way she could hide from him, and eventually she was caught in the neck by Zhuo Fangping. Little slut, didn't you want to escape? How about now? Zhuo Fangping hissed through his clenched teeth. Although Huang Yueli's life was already in the hands of others, but she didn't express much panic on her face. On the contrary, she calmly asked, actually, you're from Li Moying's sect, right? Zhuo Fangping's hand trembled as his entire body jolted. He had never ever thought that Huang Yueli was able to tell where he had originated from so accurately without any error. Impossible, this was impossible. How could she tell where his origins were? He had not leaked out his identity from the start till now, and even if he almost divulged some information, but that was only to state that Li Moying and him were acquainted. However, Li Moying was a peerless talent known by all in the South Sky region, so even if he was acquainted to him, it wasn't anything strange, and it was not enough to prove that they were from the same sect. So, this lass should be making a wild guess. Right, that must be it. He absolutely cannot fall into disarray. Zhuo Fangping squinted his eyes as he hid the puzzlement on his face and said sternly, you're going to be dead person soon, so why bother to make wild guesses? Did you think that by making pointless delay in time, you will be able to be acquitted of death? However, Huang Yueli didn't seem to hear what he said and continued deducing. I have sufficient proof to say such a thing. Firstly, there are not many experts among the people who I know. So to have the ability to find such an expert like you to assassinate me, either you're Li Moying's enemy or it would be Murong Fei, that unruly young miss. Besides that, when you heard their names earlier, your response was rather intense, so it's obvious that you know them. Secondly, for a fifth-degree realm expert like you to assassinate such a lowly character like me, you actually wore a human skin mask before you took action. As the saying goes, a guilty person conspicuously protests his innocence. Doesn't this mean that you're afraid of me or other people here that will recall your real looks? You don't dare to reveal your own face, so who are you afraid of? Who would have such power and ability to exact revenge on you? The only person around me can only be Li Moying. Zhuo Fangping's heart thumped hard and he was unable to control his emotions momentarily, almost jumping up in fright. How could this wretched lass tell that he was wearing a human skin mask? The mask on his face was a third-tier upper-level profound armament, and had been imitated to perfection. One just needed to inject a little bit of profound energy and it would merge with one's skin perfectly, unable to tell the difference. How could this country lass tell? By right, a country bumpkin like her should not have even heard of such a thing like a human skin mask. You can also listen on. Just as Zhuo Fangping was figuring out his misgivings, Huang Yueli continued talking again. Thirdly, which is also the most important point. That is the long sword that you are holding. I'd seen Li Moying welding an identical sword as well. He once told me that this was your sect's specially refined long sword and any practitioners who had reached the 5th degree realm will be able to obtain it. In total, you must have come from the same sect. And according to my conjecture, you must have taken Murong Fei's entrustment to help vent her anger, right? She is really an unruly and arrogant sect's young miss. She was obviously at fault in the first place but still want to come and exact revenge on me and even wanting to claim my life. I really regret that I had given Li Moying face and didn't kill her. Huang Yueli's calm and collected tone seemed like she wasn't the one who was held up by the neck. A wave of peril swirled in Zhuo Fangping's heart when he heard her word. He had never thought that this ordinary girl would be able to observe that clearly and make such a logical and detailed deduction. Her guesses were not too far off from the truth. The only point that was different was the person who had ordered him to kill Huang Yueli was not Murong Ni, but Murong Fei. But the reason Murong Fei told Zhuo Fangping was that Huang Yueli had bullied Murong Ni and challenged the prestige of their sect. That was why in Zhuo Fangping's ears, there was no difference between the two. Zhuo Fangping's expression was unsettled and he quickly thought of another problem. What relationship do you have with Li Moying? How did you see Li Moying's specially crafted longsword? And why did he tell you about the longsword's history? Hearing her talk about Li Moying every second, it was as though she was very close to that terrifying #1 talent. But her origin was from the weak little South Yu kingdom, so how could she possibly know Li Moying? Huang Yueli threw him a glance and said, "Me? I'm Li Moying's fiancé, of course, I know you and Li Moying have a feud and you can kill me directly. But Li Moying will definitely look for you to exact revenge." Zhuo Fangping obviously had a feud with Li Moying, and if there were any other ways, Huang Yueli would never choose to expose her relationship with Li Moying, which might infuriate Zhuo Fangping further and made him do anything extreme. But now, Zhuo Fangping was obviously not going to let her off, so no matter what she said, it wouldn't make any difference, so she had no choice but to bring Li Moying out. It was because when she mentioned Li Moying, she could tell that there was no only hatred and jealousy in Zhuo Fangping's eyes, but there was also a kind of fear, a fear that arose from the inner depth of his heart. Only a peerless genius like Li Moying would have such deterrent force. Just hearing his name alone would make his enemies tremble uncontrollably. As she had no other options to choose from, Huang Yueli could only wish that the other party would fear Li Moying taking revenge and give up the idea of killing her. Although the possibility was low, but this was her only chance. As expected, when Zhuo Fangping heard her words, he was stunned for a few moments. But not long after, he suddenly started laughing madly. "Ha ha ha," laughed Daimi. "You claim you're Li Moying's fiancé? Who are you trying to cheat? If you were to claim that you are Li Moying's sister, I might believe. As for his fiancé, he would not even lay his eyes on junior sister Murong, so what could he possibly see in you, a malnourished beansprout? You can also listen on. Junior sister Murong? Was he referring to Murong Ni? Something seemed to flash past Huang Yueli's mind when she heard what he said, but she didn't manage to capture that thought. Zhuo Fangping apparently didn't believe in what she said and had completely lost his patience as he controlled her meridians. Huang Yueli could not move a single bit, and as entire body turned feeble, she fell on her back onto the ground. Damn it! Huang Yueli cursed in her mind. This Zhuo Fangping really wasn't a gentleman. He actually treated such a delicate young lady in such a vicious manner. And why was it that every single time she told someone that she was Li Moying's fiancé, no one actually believed her? This stinky man, although he was wee bit handsome, his power was a bit more powerful, and his status was much higher, but surely Huang Yueli wasn't that bad, right? Even though this marriage agreement was a makeshift stratagem, but was there a need for other people to mock at her? This really made her feel emotionally stuffed. As Huang Yueli fell, her gaze shot to the behind of Zhuo Fangping as she blinked her eye. On a huge tree not too far away from Zhuo Fangping was a little golden, red bird sapling hiding among the dense leaves. It was anxiously looking towards this direction as its two little claws couldn't help but keep fidgeting around, feeling especially unsettled. If it hadn't been for Huang Yueli who kept comforting it with her gazes, he wouldn't be able to bear it any longer and flew over here. On seeing Huang Yueli's last glance, it turned more anxious than ever. As Huang Yueli's contractual spiritual pet, Little Phoenix and her could be said that their minds and hearts were interconnected. Little Phoenix was very clear that what Zhuo Fangping had told Huang Yueli earlier, including the guesses and analysis of his identity, was actually not to delay the time or to anger the other party, but was for it to hear. After Zhuo Fangping had defeated Huang Yueli, He had also injured Little Phoenix and Little Vulture but had not bothered about them since. Since Little Phoenix was an ancient spiritual beast, he had recovered around 30 to 40% of his strength. Although his power was just that much, but at least its movements were not hindered anymore. So Huang Yueli had commanded it not to come too close, and using this method, she spoke out all her guesses so that Little Phoenix would know about it and deliver a message to try and inform Li Moying about this news. If she was really killed, then at least Li Moying would be able to exact revenge for her. Huang Yueli had wanted to extract more inside stories from Zhuo Fangping, but not knowing why, the term fiancé seemed to agitate his senses as he completely lost his patience and stuck immediately. If she died, Little Phoenix would not be able to show his physical body outside of the Sky Phoenix ring and would be instantly retracted back into it, to wait for the next master to awaken it. Because of that, Huang Yueli had felt that her life was coming to an end and used a glance to hint Little Phoenix for him to go quickly. Even if she had to die, it had to spread the news out to Cai Wei and the rest who were still alive outside the forest, before she died. But Little Phoenix repeatedly hopped around on the tree, refusing to leave. Two watery eyes were tearing as its heart was filled with reluctance. It hadn't been busy to get out of the Sky Phoenix ring, and he had even found a master who could cook tasty chicken drumsticks, so he didn't want her to die like this. Why was he only a young sapling phoenix? If he had been a powerful and mighty big phoenix like its brother, would the outcome turn out differently? For the very first time, little Wang Cai wished he would grow up quickly and defend its master. You can also listen on. Little Phoenix hesitated for a while, but he knew that he didn't have much time and couldn't afford to waste any further. So in the end, it still reluctantly turned back to look at Huang Yueli, and fluttering its wings, it flew out of the forest. Zhuo Fangping walked over and with a gloomy face, he squatted next to her. Little slut, make a guess which method I will use to kill you. Huang Yueli didn't say a word. Zhuo Fangping leaned in closer and said, what do you think, if I severed your hands and legs then throw you into the pig cage to wait for death, or smear your entire body with honey and throw you into the queen bee's beehive? Or maybe, I can throw you into the white-headed meadow viper's hole and let them swallow you alive. His voice was doleful and scary, and in order to make Huang Yueli terrified, he intentionally listed several sinister and disgusting methods, just to hear her appalling screams. It would be best if he could make this sharp-tongued wretched lass kowtow and beg for mercy, acting like a fool. However, there was no expression on Huang Yueli's face as she silently shut her eyelids. She naturally knew that the best option now was for her to beg for mercy. It wasn't because after Zhuo Fangping would let her off after begging for mercy, and in this way, she would be able to delay even more time and allow Little Phoenix to pass the message successfully. But even though she was very clear on this, she was unable to force herself to bow and bend her knee. Zhuo Fangping grew angrier upon seeing her peaceful look. He sniggered, why? Did you think I won't do that? Hehe, I'm just thinking these three methods are just plainly too easy for you, so I've thought of a marvelous idea. Although these three methods were already disgusting and horrifying enough, but Zhuo Fangping still felt that it was an easy death for her and had thought of another perverted way to deal with her. If it was any other young lady here, she would have already been frightened out of her soul. But Huang Yueli was extremely peaceful. Anyway, she had already died once before, so dying one more time didn't make any difference to her. If Zhuo Fangping had wanted to torment her, then she wouldn't obediently allow him to do so. Under no way of retreat, she would choose to self-explode again. However, that was the last resort and she wasn't going to do it now. After all, she still had to gain a little more time for Little Phoenix. Zhuo Fangping saw that she wasn't frightened at all and felt upset. To say such things to threaten someone was naturally to make the other party as frightened as possible. The more pitiful she cried, the tormentor would feel more pleasurable. If the tormented person had no reaction at all, then it was all meaningless, and even feel a sense of dejection. Zhuo Fangping was currently in this state. Hence he didn't hesitate any further and placed his hand directly on Huang Yueli's chest. Huang Yueli wanted to say something, but suddenly, she felt a somber profound energy instilled into her body. Dark attribute profound energy. Dark attribute was a rare profound energy and was extremely somber and strange. The instant the dark attribute profound energy was instilled into her, she immediately felt cold like ice, as though all her energy had been frozen. Following that, she felt her brain hum as though it was about to explode. Intense pain raided her next, and at the same time, her conscience seemed to turn fuzzy. Huang Yueli gritted her teeth as she tried her best to bear with this pain, but this was just the beginning. As time went past, the intensity of the pain became stronger and stronger. You can also listen on. Not only that, she could also clearly felt that her soul train had been invaded by the dark attributed profound energy. Her conscience didn't seem to be under control and gradually drifted away from her. Huang Yueli knew things were taking a bad turn and hurriedly used her last bit of determination and bit hard on the tip of her tongue. Pain invaded her senses, and as the heavy blood stench filled her mouth before Huang Yueli became clear-headed slightly. Just at this moment, she heard Zhuo Fengping's sinister snigger. Ha ha, painful? Unbearable? Do you feel like dying because of the pain? But don't worry, I won't let you die, and in fact, this is just the beginning. Have you heard of the 7-character soul extinguishment skill? 7-character soul extinguishment skill? When the name of the cultivation method was transmitted to Huang Yueli's ears, it let her regain a slight sense of soberness momentarily because this cultivation method was simply too vicious. Dark attributed cultivation methods excelled in changing the environment, creating hallucinations, and affecting one's conscience and condition. In the middle of a battle, it could often lead the enemy to enter a state of confusion, thereby obtaining victory. But the 7-character soul extinguishment skill was the most outstanding among the dark attributed cultivation methods, as the effects were the most sinister type. As expected, Zhuo Fengping continued, I think a country lass like you definitely have not heard of this. Then let me tell you more about it. After your brain had been invaded by my dark attributed profound energy, you'd become a living corpse with no conscience, and you will also possess animal instincts, often lusting for blood and very wanton. Very soon, you will behave like a dog, climbing on the ground on your 4 limbs and devouring raw meat like a dog, attacking any living animal the minute you see it, and bite it to death. More importantly, your body will also turn very ******, even if it was a roadside hound, as long as it's a male, you can also do it with it. Huang Yueli's conscience gradually turned fuzzy, but Zhuo Fengping was still sniggering non-stop, ridiculing and describing all sorts of miserable conditions which she might possibly encounter. However, she was unable to focus on what he was saying exactly. She knew the current situation was anything but assuring, because whatever Zhuo Fengping had said was not empty threats but things that would really happen. In her previous life, she had personally witnessed a practitioner who was struck by the 7-character soul extinguishment skill. That person gradually lost his consciousness and became extremely loose and wanton, even worse than a dog. As that scene was too shocking, until now, she was unable to forget about it. If she had to turn into that manner, Huang Yueli felt that she would not be able to bear this sort of thing, and she would rather die. But this amount of time was simply too short. From the time where little Phoenix had flown away to the time when she had been injected with the dark attributed profound energy, invading her body, it had only been a quarter of an hour. It was not even enough for little Phoenix to fly too far, not knowing if it was enough for it to locate Cai Wei already. If only she could hold on a little while more. But once she lost her consciousness, she would lose the possibility of self-explosion, and can only turn into a human-shaped beast with no conscience. Forget it, even if no one could exact revenge for her, she would not be able to bear the fact that she would eventually turn into that way. Huang Yueli grinded her teeth and bit through her tongue once again, and using her last piece of consciousness and her strongest determination, she forced herself to adjust all the profound energy in her body to consolidate in her dantian. Zhuo Fengping had always been by her side, and he sensed the unusual movements of her profound energy, and immediately reacted to it. Wretched lass, you want to self-explode? You can also listen on. Zhuo Fengping shot forward like an arrow and placed his right hand on the position of her dantian. His expression was malevolent as he yelled, "Want to self-explode? Do you think that once you're in my clutches, I'll let you do that? I said I'd let you go through utter misery, hoping to die, but you can't. With my profound energy suppressing you, you have absolutely no way to self-explode. Zhuo Fangping spoke with absolute self-confidence. In actual fact, it was exactly as it was shown. In order to self-explode one's dantian, Huang Yueli must consolidate all the profound energy in her body at that one point and at the same time, unleash it out, thereby bursting her dantian. But Zhuo Fangping's cultivation was higher than her by several big realms. He only needed to use his profound energy to his advantage and control the flow of her profound energy, so even if Huang Yueli wanted to burst her dantian, it was an impossible task to do. However, Huang Yueli was laughing coldly in her heart. She had, after all, a flame spirit physique and had learnt various cultivation methods. Her heaven-level cultivation method, 9 Phoenix transformations, utilized an extremely abstruse way of operating the profound energy in her body. It was something that a person like Zhuo Fangping would not be able to understand. Hence, if she wanted to self-explode, Zhuo Fangping would not be able to stop her, even if Zhuo Fangping had pressed on her dantian and kept exerting pressure on her, but the profound energy in Huang Yueli's body still gradually consolidated together. In a couple of breaths' time, it would be able to completely congeal. When it had reached this life and death juncture, Huang Yueli's heart was filled with regrets. Or it could be said that she had too many regrets, too many things that she wanted to do but did not have the opportunity to do so. No matter if it was the previous life scheme or this life's love debt, she had no time to settle it at all. She finally had the chance to be reborn, but she had not expected that her lifespan in this lifetime was merely 2 months before it came to a sudden halt. And she would die under just a 5th-degree realm practitioner dubiously. Could it be that this was her fate? Even after reincarnation, she was still a lonely soul, never able to attain what she desired. She remembered Mu Chengying and, uncontrollably, thought of Li Moying. In her fuzzy conscious, the two men's looks led together, and initially there was only a 30 to 40% similarity, but now it had completely matched up. That unexcelled number 1 expert in her previous life and that overbearing, arrogant, peerless genius, both of their figures were unable to be split apart. Huang Yueli felt that this must be an illusion at her brink of death because both of their figures kept appearing repeatedly and many times. She was unable to tell who was who. Gradually, even their figures became fuzzy. Huang Yueli shut her eyes and prepared to stake all in one throw and self-explode once again, but just at the moment when she was about to ignite the profound energy, suddenly a voice could be heard from not too far away. "I say, why is the forest so noisy and flames spewing everywhere? So looks like someone had struck out against such a dainty young lady." Zhuo Fangping had never expected anyone to appear at this moment. Furthermore, he had interrupted him at such a critical juncture. He suddenly turned back and stared at the figure behind him. Who are you? Why did you come to the forest at this timing? What is your intention?" Huang Yueli sensed that the pressure and restriction on her dantian had lessened in that instance. When she heard that man's voice, she had initially thought it was her hallucination from the pain and pressure, but when Zhuo Fangping suddenly stood up, it made her realize that someone had really appeared. You can also listen on. Huang Yueli tried her best to pry open her eyes and looked towards the direction of the voice. However, no matter how hard she tried to open her big eyes, with her consciousness under the attack of the dark attributed profound energy, she was unable to focus and could only see a blurry white-colored figure, wandering a short distance away. Zhuo Fangping stood up and raised his alert against the man in front of him. The white-robed man stood facing the wing as his sleeves fluttered lightly. That delicate features looked right out of a painting, unable to shift one's eyes away from that elegant demeanor, especially pleasing to the eye. After Zhuo Fangping laid his eyes on him, he heaved a sigh of relief. It was because he could not sense any obvious profound energy fluctuations from this white-robed man, as though he wasn't a practitioner. In that instance when he was called, Zhuo Fangping had a shock. For someone who could break his momentum while he was utilizing his cultivation method, he was certain that it was a practitioner whose strength was much higher than his, so he turned around while staying alert. Now at one glance, it was possible that he was a wealthy master who happened to pass by. As for how he managed to break his utilization of his cultivation method, perhaps it was just a coincidence. Zhuo Fangping stared at the white-robed man and scorned coldly, "What does it have to do with you? I'm warning you, mind your own business. Hurry up and scram. I'll count to 3, If you still don't disappear by then, I don't mind taking your life." Saying that, he unleashed his vigor and the surrounding air seemed to congeal slightly, attempting to force the white-robed man to retreat. However, unexpectedly, the white-robed man stood there, but his expression was still as calm and collected as before, not moving a single inch. Zhuo Fangping sensed a hint of abnormality and hurriedly raised his power to his peak, but there was still no response from the white-robed man. The white-robed man pursed his lips slightly as he spat out a sentence frostily, "Just like this, and you think you can claim my life?" Zhuo Fangping immediately knew he had messed things up. If one was unable to sense another's profound energy's fluctuations, there was only two possibilities. One was an ordinary person with no ounce of profound energy, and the other could only be that the other party's cultivation was much higher than him, so he was unable to investigate his true strength. Now that this white-robed man had no reaction to his fifth-degree realm's profound energy, then it would mean that he was not an ordinary person, so it could only be the latter. Zhuo Fangping immediately retracted his profound energy and lowered his stance as he nodded his head furiously and bent over. This senior, are you passing by this forest? I'm extremely sorry to have disturbed you. Earlier what I had said, please treat that I'm passing gas and let me go. I have some personal feud that I must settle, and I had no intention to offend you. Please have mercy on me. I'll bring this person away right now. White-robed man didn't say anything. Zhuo Fangping waited for a little while but didn't get a response, and felt that he should be more tactful. So he hastily tugged at Huang Yueli's collar as he dragged her from the ground. His steps were at lightning speed, only thinking of leaving the boundary of the forest immediately. Even though he didn't know where this expert had appeared from, but he didn't want to complicate matters further, so changing a spot to deal with this wretched lass was all the same, as he didn't need to risk offending this unknown expert. However, just as he was about to pass by the white-robed man, the man stretched out his arm and blocked his way. Wait! Zhuo Fangping's footsteps came to a halt as he raised his head to look at him. Senior, you are. The white-robed man lowered his chin as he gazed at Huang Yueli, who was by his feet. You can also listen on. By now, Huang Yueli's conscience had become very blurry and she had been relying on her willpower to hold on. Her soul trace had always been stronger than ordinary people, so she could still barely figure out what was happening in the outer world. White-robed man's vision fell onto her and he suddenly smiled. That's interesting. This lass is not of marriageable age. Her cultivation is also really bad as well. Why did you drag her to the outskirts and use the 7-character soul extinguishment skill on her? Could it be that you wanted to be rough with her but met with resistance, so you flew into a rage out of humiliation? This. Senior, Zhuo Fangping was dumbfounded as he had not expected such a powerful person like this white-robed man would actually ask this kind of question. Moreover, most powerful practitioners were cold and aloof, and would barely smile to those weaker practitioners. Unfortunately, there was no affinity in that white-robed man's smile. On the contrary, it seemed rather evil and a glint of ill intention flashed past that set of pupils. Zhuo Fangping turned anxious as he was not able to grasp this white-robed man's background. He hemmed and hawed, Senior, things are not what you're thinking about. This wretched lass and I do not have that kind of relationship. I have been entrusted by someone else to kill her only. Oh, not that kind of relationship. White-robed man raised his eyebrow. Originally, if you really were unsuccessful at ***ing her, I'd let you go. After all, being a Casanova is part of a man's nature, I can understand that part, but now that you say you're not, then I'm curious. Before you have satisfied my curiosity, then both of you must stay. When Zhuo Fangping heard what he said, he almost roared with laughter. What kind of logic was that? He was afraid that this senior who had passed by was bursting with righteousness and wanted to be chivalrous, to bring justice to him for forcing a girl who had yet to meet the marriageable age, so he hurriedly clarified himself. However, the white-robed man actually said if he would let him off if he was compelling the young lady, and if he wasn't, they had to stay. What kind of situation was this? He quickly added, No, senior. I said it wrongly. This lass, was someone I wanted to play around, but I did not expect her to carry so many profound armaments on her, and unexpectedly she had hurt me. I was furious and rashly dealt her a murderous hand. Heh, that's not true, right? This lass has been injured by you from head to toe, but yet her clothes are still intact, and it cannot be more intact, so how could it be that you're forcing yourself on her? You dare to lie to me, so you'd better stay behind. Zhuo Fangping raised his head in surprise and met directly with the white-robed man's glare. White-robed man leaned slightly against a big tree with a lazy expression as he smiled willfully. His looks were exceedingly handsome, and with this smile, it was comparable to the highest quality jade, faultlessly talented. Zhuo Fangping's heart thumped loudly. This man's gaze was just too evil, and in connection to what he had said earlier, he was obviously making a fool out of him. No matter what he said, this white-robed man was not intending to let him leave easily. Zhuo Fangping was upset, but as the other party's power was much higher than his, he did not dare to show his rage and could only swallow this down, explaining in a nice tone. Senior, nothing can escape your eyes. I had indeed no intention to do anything improper to this lass. What I said earlier was the truth. I had been entrusted by someone else to assassinate her. But as there were some accidents, it had dragged until now. So senior, please have mercy and let us go. You can also listen on. Zhuo Fangping believed that he had already shown his most humble behavior as he weighed every single word he said, in order not to cause any displeasure to that white-robed man. But even after this, there was still a frivolous smile on the other man's face. Just now you said that you were forcing yourself on that lady, and now you say there's no such thing. Which sentence is the truth? From what I see, nothing you say is true. You're intentionally making a fool out of me. The white-robed man had started off with a smile, but when he spoke till the end, his intonations suddenly changed and it suddenly became cold like ice. No. It's not like that. Please listen to my explanation. Zhuo Fangping was frightened by his stern tone until his back was filled with sweat, and as his legs gave way, he kneeled onto the ground. White-robed man snorted coldly as he suddenly used his hand and held Zhuo Fangping's chin. He gave a dull groan woo. A clump of blood spewed out from Zhuo Fangping's mouth, and he covered his mouth with his hands as he started unbelievably at the white-robed man, his face filled with terror. Shortly after, he coughed and spat out a chunk of his tongue from his mouth. He opened his mouth making an ah sound several times, but he could only give out some blurry noises, not even able to say a single word clearly. The white-robed man replied coldly, I have been in seclusion here for quite some time because of the serene and quiet environment. I had never expected that because of you wreaking havoc here, not only have you caused me a major headache, you have also ruined an entire furnace of 9 transformations turnabout pill which I had been refining for 81 days. Cutting off your tongue is just a small punishment. If you dare to appear in front of me again, don't blame me for taking your life. Zhuo Fangping begged mournfully with a woo-woo sound as blood kept dripping from the corners of his mouth. White-robed man asserted, still not going to scram? His voice was soft as though whispers to a lover's ears, but this made Zhuo Fangping sweat profusely. He couldn't bother about the extreme pain in his mouth and turned around in a flurry as he grabbed Huang Yueli's clothes in an attempt to bring her along. White-robed man said again, why? Don't understand what I'm saying? She stays. You scram. Zhuo Fangping lowered his head as he looked at Huang Yueli longingly. He had spent a substantial amount of skills before he managed to catch this crafty lass. However, before he could kill her, he was asked to leave her there. But his 7-character soul extinguishment skill was a dark attributed heaven-grade cultivation method, and since Huang Yueli had already been inflicted by his dark attributed profound energy, he gauged that going mad would be a matter of sooner or later. If there was anyone in the entire soaring heavens continent who could save someone whose conscience who had been invaded by the dark attributed profound energy, it would only be the #1 Divine Doctor Liu. It was impossible for other people. So even if she remained behind, her death was imminent. With this in mind, Zhuo Fangping no longer hesitated and hurriedly let ditch Huang Yueli. The soles of his feet seemed to have been anointed with oil as he speedily left the forest. White-robed man didn't chase after him, or even cast him a single glance. Instead he walked to the front of Huang Yueli and squatted down. Huang Yueli's consciousness was now 90% blurry, with barely 10% still lucid. She could vaguely feel that Zhuo Fangping had already been chased away by the sudden appearance of this white-robed man. She knew that she was not going to hang on any longer. But now that things have come to such a pass, if she felt indignant if she were self-explode here. However, the white-robed man lowered his chin and stared at her for some time with no signs of movements, or even any intention to save her. You can also listen on. After a while later, Huang Yueli felt that her head was about to split open from the pain and was not going to hand on any further. She finally moaned and spoke intermittently, "Save me. Please. Save me. Save you." White-robed man leaned in a bit closer, seemingly enjoying her tormented expression. "Why should I save you? What benefits will I gain from saving you?" Huang Yueli cursed silently in her heart. If he wasn't prepared to save her, then why did he raise out his hands and obstruct? And even chased away Zhuo Fangping? Did he have nothing better to do? However, under the current situation, she didn't have any stand to be arrogant, so she could only talk terms with good grace. "Save me. I can give you money and profound armaments. Pills." When white-robed man heard, he lifted his head back and laughed heartily, as though he was laughing at her ignorance and stupidity. "Money? How much can you possibly give me? I'm not in need of money. Profound armaments, pills, however much I want, I have it all. You're intending to use those worthless items which you can find on the streets to exchange for your life." Huang Yueli was pushed back by his words as she thought with indignance. What did this fellow mean? Fooling around with her? By now, she had more or less understood Zhuo Fangping's feelings earlier. This mysterious white-robed man's words could really kill a person. "Then why did you save me?" White-robed man gave a low laugh as he said, "I saved you. Perhaps it was because I wanted to see the effect of the 7-character soul extinguishment skill. As everyone knows, only very few dark attribute geniuses are able to master the 7-character soul extinguishment skill, and it is very rare to encounter someone who is affected by this skill to not have its effect blown up yet. So I wanted to bring you back as a specimen so that I can observe how the 7-character soul extinguishment skill takes effect." Huang Yueli was rendered speechless. The white-robed man shifted himself next to Huang Yueli's ear and spoke in a low voice. "How is it? Have you considered already? If you're willing to be my clinical trial test kid, then I can bring you back. Perhaps in the middle of the clinical trial, you might have some *T luck and encounter some medication which might just restrain the dark attributed cultivation method, which may give you a 1 in 10,000 chance of living." When Huang Yueli heard what he said, she went completely silent. Such a black-bellied and sinister person was not commonly found. Based on the white-robed man's power and the way he talked, it reminded her of a particular someone. Huang Yueli's heart surfaced a guess, and she instantly got excited as her heartbeat increased by several counts. She used all her determination and tried hard to open her eyes and take a look to see who was that person in front of her, but the more she tried, the blurry her vision became as an increasing pain filled her brain. That was why she was not able to see the person clearly. Until the moment before she fainted, not knowing if it was due to a sudden spurt of activity before collapsing, the face before her suddenly became clearer. A seemingly familiar face appeared right before her eyes. Huang Yueli blinked her eyes as she wasn't able to tell at that moment that the person in front of her was real or just an illusion. She couldn't help but blurt out, "Liu Buyan. You stuffy old fox." Before she could finish her words, her eyes rolled backwards as she fainted. The white-robed man was stunned for a moment, and following that, he agitatedly got up and pounced onto Huang Yueli. What did you call me earlier? How could you possibly know who I am? Wretched lass, wake up and speak clearly. You can also listen on." The white-robed man tugged on Huang Yueli's collar as she was repeatedly shook and swayed, but Huang Yueli was in a deeply unconscious state, so no matter how much he called her, she could not wake up. In reality, the consequence of this concussion would highly likely end up in death, which would result in her really sleeping forever. He realized this as well, and after shaking her for a while, he put her down. He mumbled to himself, how could this be possible? How could she be the same as that person, to call me by that disgusting nickname? This is obviously an insult to my character and power. This wretched lass looks very young, so how on earth would she know the term stuffy old fox? In the past, only that person would call me by this name. The Liu Buyan whom Huang Yueli talked about was the #1 Divine Doctor in Soaring Heaven's continent, and the #1 Pill Master. The white-robed man who had appeared in the forest was Liu Buyan himself. Besides Huang Yueli, no one else would address him in that way. However, that talented and beautiful lady in his memory had passed on for many years now. Her soul had dispersed and she would never be able to return to his side ever. Liu Buyan shut his eyes as his gaze turned dark, gloomy and unfathomable. Even so, just that familiar appellation brought back many memories in his heart and touched the deepest scar hidden deep within his heart. He silently looked at Huang Yueli for a couple of minutes and realized that her facial color had gradually turned steely green. Dark attributed profound energy was going to invade her rationale completely. Liu Buyan outstretched his hand and pressed against Huang Yueli's chest. Looking at this little lass, she cannot die yet. He instilled a large amount of profound energy into her dantian and based on his strong and pure earth attributed profound energy, it tussled against dark attributed profound energy. Although it could not get to the root cause, but at least it could prevent the profound energy from spreading, and it would also stabilize Huang Yueli's condition, temporarily stopping it from worsening. He struggled for a moment but still bent down his waist and carried the young lady as he walked towards the direction of the deep end of the forest. By the time Huang Yueli woke up in a daze, it was already the second day's afternoon. She shook her head and felt that her brain was still painful as though it was about to explode. Besides that, she could see bouts of darkness, as though she might faint any moment. She used her hand to press on her temples and it was after an amount of time before she felt slightly sober and could barely see the things in front of her. She was actually in a room. Although the room was not too big, but it could be seen that the master of the house had put much thoughts into the delicate decor, unconventional and yet not too lavish. Huang Yueli sized up her surroundings and still felt muddled momentarily. A clinking sound came from outside of the room as the room door was opened by someone. A white-robed man walked into the room from the outside. When Huang Yueli saw his face, she opened her eyes wide with shock. This man was actually someone she was rather close to in her past life, #1 Divine Doctor Liu Buyan. At the same time, the memories from before she fainted came flushing into her as she suddenly recalled. So, when her conscience was muddled, that white-colored silhouette that she had saw was not her imagination from her delirious state, but something that had actually happened. Huang Yueli had intended to say something but she was cut off by Liu Buyan. Little lass, consider your good luck that my mood isn't too bad today, so I made the sudden decision to save you. But don't be too happy for now. You can also listen on. Liu Buyan slowly walked nearer as a cooling frivolous smile hung on his face. His vision stopped briefly on Huang Yueli's face and followed downwards from her neckline as his gaze swept one round. Huang Yueli instinctually felt something was amiss, lowered her head immediately and realized that the topmost buckle had loosened, revealing a graceful shapely collarbone, and a large portion of her delicate skin near her bosom could also be seen. This was just too embarrassing. She hurriedly sat up and tried to buckle up properly. However, she had overestimated her current condition. The minute Huang Yueli moved, she felt a sense of dizziness, and before she could sit up properly, she fell head down towards the ground. Oh no! Would she break her head? Why was she in such a miserable state today? Yet, the scenario of her head smashing against the ground did not happen as a powerful source of energy circled around her body. Following that, her body floated to mid-air and banged heavily against a rock-hard chest. Under the acute shock, her already dizzy head had now become completely blank as she was so dizzy until she could not even raise up her head. Even when her eyes were shut tight, all she could see in her vision were countless shooting stars. If you wanted to throw yourself into my arms, say so earlier. Why bother using such tricks? She could hear a coquettish laugh from a man's vocals beside her ear, and that tone was indescribably filled with evil intentions. Huang Yueli was seldom so dazed and totally could not react to his words. What? Liu Buyan continued, I've seen lots of women who throw themselves at me, but if you're intending to use this method to compensate me for saving your life, it's not that I won't consider this possibility, but, just tell me straight. There's no need to use this kind of fake falling trick. In Huang Yueli's confused mind, she managed to retain some rationale. After hearing what he said, her expression turned green almost immediately. Even after 10 over years, Li Buyan still haven't changed his tea eating habits. In her past life, Liu Buyan was temperamental and had a cynical attitude which was rather well known. The number of people who begged Liu Buyan to help treat them were innumerable, but as he had a weird temper, unless the other party were good friends like Mu Chengying, otherwise even if the other party brought a priceless treasure to seek consultation would also meet with difficulties. The worst of all was not only the terms that he had laid out were harsh, sometimes even if the other party had met with his requests, he might not even give them a consultation and it would entirely depend on his mood. When he was in a bad mood, he went back on his words quite often. Because of this, Liu Buyan had offended quite various powerhouses in Soaring Heaven's continent, and he belonged to the detested type of people. However, even though everyone hated him, but no one dared to be discourteous to him. When they meet him, they would still need to lower down their stance and pretend to be nice. The reason was because Liu Buyan's medical skills were really beyond imagination. It could be said that for the past several thousand years, he had always been the #1 divine doctor in the entire Soaring Heavens continent. No one would dare to guarantee that there wouldn't be a day where they need his help, so no matter how much they hated him, they would need to swallow their pride. However, there was a type of people who would gain priority in front of Divine Doctor Liu. That was beautiful young ladies. Liu Buyan was also well known for being a Casanova, and as he was also one of the famous males and his ranking was just behind Mu Chengying, the number of young ladies who admired him were countless. You can also listen on. Mu Chengying and Liu Buyan were very good friends and often appeared together. Whenever the both of them appeared, it would often attract talented ladies from various major sects who specially came to crowd around them or expressed their love. Mu Chengying's character was extremely cold, and to women other than Huang Yueli, he often looked and spoke harshly. But Liu Buyan was completely different. Every single woman who threw themselves at him, he would immodestly take liberties with them. He treated everyone with the same ambiguous attitude, causing many young ladies to shed tears because of him. Besides that, Liu Buyan had a special way of doing things. That was if he fancied any beautiful woman, he would give a free consultation for the other party. His only request was for that party to accompany him for an entire month, and she must listen to all his demands and fulfill all his requests. Every single movement must be according to his wishes. It was because of this regulation that he was castigated by many. Some who hated him thought that he was a sex fiend who took advantage of people when they had fallen and using this as an excuse to soil his reputation behind his back. Only those, like Huang Yueli or Mu Chengying, who were closer to him knew that reality and rumors were very different. It was true that Liu Buyan had a filthy mouth and he often loved to take liberties with ladies. Besides, as his character was wicked, his mouth was not always that cheap. When he was happy, all sorts of ambiguous sweet nothings would spill out, but when he was wicked, he could really infuriate one to death. But if one was to say that he was frivolous, then that might not be so. Huang Yueli sighed slightly as she recalled some things from her past life, and the rage that was riled up by Liu Buyan seemed to have descended by quite a bit. She bore with the dizziness and she clenched her teeth and said, "Can you don't be so narcissistic? Who would want to throw myself at you? I merely wanted to sit up, but I almost nearly fainted, really? This explanation seems to be real, but you've already leaned against my chest for so long already and you still can't bear to get up. Aren't you secretly hinting me or something?" Saying that, Liu Buyan lowered his head as a smile hung on the corners of his lips and he gradually went nearer to her ear. "You know, I cannot bear to let any beauty disappointed." Huang Yueli's lips twitched as she went totally speechless in her heart. In the past when she heard Liu Buyan was frivolous, but because she was Mu Chengying's woman, Liu Buyan did not dare to show her any disrespect. Now that her identity had changed, when she heard what he said, she felt awkward to the maximum. She used her strength and pushed Liu Buyan, speaking in an infuriated tone. "I've already said that I don't mean it in that way. If you don't want to make me disappointed, then scram further away." Huang Yueli moved backwards, attempting to sit back on the bed. but this sudden movement caused her to almost fall down again. Liu Buyan held out his hand in time as he held her waist. "Little beauty, do you know what it means by your mouth saying yes but your heart saying no and rejecting your desire but actually welcoming it?" Looking at Liu Buyan's expression that looked like a smile but yet not a smile, Huang Yueli almost wanted to throw up blood. Why was the effect of this 7-character soul extinguishment skill so abnormal? Until now, not only was she not able to utilize her profound energy, she kept having dizzy spells making her unable to even stand properly. Besides that, she had continuously made a fool out of herself in front of Liu Buyan. If he really misunderstood anything, then in future when they met again, won't she die of embarrassment? Thinking of this, Huang Yueli felt that she must find ways to ascertain her identity just in case Liu Buyan develops any unnecessary misunderstanding. Liu Buyan was also Mu Chengying's best friend. So if she was able to receive his help, then she would be able to return to Mu Chengying successfully. You can also listen on. The only problem was, she needed to consider carefully on how to put this across. After all, everyone in the entire Soaring Heavens continent knew about her death in northern ice fields. After the soul had been dispersed, one would completely disappear from the surface of the earth, not even able to reincarnate. Hence in everyone's eyes, Huang Yueli had completely become a dead person. If she were to jump out suddenly, claiming that she was a person who had died many years ago and was even Liu Buyan's old friend, there was a 90% chance that everyone's first reaction was disbelief. After all, even Huang Yueli was unable to explain why she was able to reincarnate, and had even assumed her current identity. No matter how one thought, it totally didn't make any sense, but it had indeed happened. Moreover, if Liu Buyan chose not to believe her, it wasn't that bad. But he might feel that it's some scheme that his foes had sent to deal with him. If there was such a misunderstanding, don't talk about meeting Mu Chengying, she might even lose her little life here. Liu Buyan was a genuine 9th-degree realm expert and was a famous one at that. His temper and character had always been strange, and if there was even the slightest disagreement, it wouldn't be strange that he might just kill her without any explanation. Huang Yueli shut her eyes as she tried to think of a way out. However, she was simply too dizzy to the extent that she was unable to think about anything properly. Just as she was at a loss, suddenly, she felt 2 streams of high concentrated vision on her. Huang Yueli hurriedly opened her eyes as she saw Liu Buyan staring at her, seemingly lost in his thoughts. Seeing her open her eyes, Liu Buyan raised his brow as he said, "Why? Really that dizzy?" "Not really dizzy, it's very dizzy, extremely dizzy." Huang Yueli's face turned pale as she felt she hadn't been in such a pathetic state for a very long time. She was not exaggerating this round because her soul trace had always been stronger than most practitioners, and even if she was heavily injured, her state of mind would be clearer than most practitioners' consciousness. But now that she was so dizzy, she felt that she was unable to think clearly. Had this situation happen on other people, they would have probably fainted over completely. Liu Buyan didn't know what she was thinking, so he looked at her in disdain. "Woman, aren't you exaggerating just a little too much? If you were that dizzy, how could you still speak to me so clearly?" Huang Yueli raised her head and looked into the sky as she went speechless. So because her conscience was too strong and she didn't faint immediately, and that was actually a mistake? However, she indeed could not hang on any longer. She felt that she would faint any minute now, and within this short period of time, she would not be able to wake up. Although Liu Buyan scorned her, but the expression on his face turned solemn. He placed his fingers on Huang Yueli's wrist, checking on the condition of her pulse and profound energy in her body, and even after a long time, he had not let go. In fact, his expression had turned graver by the minute. After some time did he release Huang Yueli's wrist as he spoke. "The dark attributed profound energy in your body had exceeded my prediction. Initially I thought that fellow was only a 5th-degree realm practitioner and his profound energy was not as pure and he might not be able to bring the 7-character soul extinguishment skill into play. But from the looks of this, he should be from a large sect and have a certain amount of potential." Huang Yueli replied lethargically, "After saying so much, are you able to cure me? If you can't, then, just say it straight. You can also listen on." Liu Buyan was dumbfounded when he heard that, and immediately after, his expression turned ugly. The weak lass right in front of him was extremely immodest. She returned the ridicule that he had sent to her just minutes ago. Earlier he said if she wanted to throw herself him, just tell him straight, and now her reply was if you're not able to cure me, just tell me now. Didn't this mean she was doubting his medical skill? If this could be tolerated, then what else could not be? In Liu Buyan's entire life, the one thing that he could not tolerate was someone doubting his medical skills. He retorted grumpily, "Who says I can't cure you? I was just saying, judging on your injuries, just based on taking pills alone would not be enough to eradicate the dark attribute profound energy in your body completely. As long as a little bit of dark attributed profound energy remains, the giddiness that you encounter will remain. So in terms of treatment, there are just some inconveniences." "Oh," Huang Yueli just replied with a single-tone word. Even though it was a short reply, but in Liu Buyan's ears, it was comprehended as thousands of words. This wretched lass, did she think he was not able to understand what she meant? She did not believe in his medical skills at all and had thought that he was lying? What a joke! Were there any injuries that he, Liu Buyan, was unable to cure? To doubt him in this way, where had the eyes of this woman gone to? Oh, that's right, a country bumpkin like this lass couldn't possibly know what an extraordinary person he was. However, Liu Buyan's mood was extremely vile. "What do you mean? Do you think I can't cure you? I'm telling you, it's just a 5th-degree realm practitioner putting his profound energy to use on the 7-character soul extinguishment skill only. Even if it was a 9th-degree realm practitioner's arm, I can also cure. The reason why you feel so giddy is because I had not expected your cultivation to be that bad. If it had been practitioners with stronger power, they would not end up like you." "Oh," Huang Yueli still replied using the same single-tone word. Liu Buyan answered, You, simply trying to anger me to death. Since you don't believe me, then I will help to cure." Saying to this point, Liu Buyan seemed to have realized something and immediately shut his mouth. He hastily corrected himself. "If you don't believe me, then beg me. If you manage to make me happy and agree to my terms, I can consider giving you treatment." Huang Yueli pouted her lips as she secretly thought this fellow's reaction was rather quick. She did not want Liu Buyan to deliberately make things difficult, so she taunted him. She had some understanding of Liu Buyan's thinking and knew that when this fellow agreed to treat a patient, it was definitely not because he wanted to be a saint, helping to tend to the sick and injured. Other than treating his best friends or beautiful women, towards other people, there were several times when he agreed to the treatment. It was just to prove that his medical skills were the best malpractice and no one else were comparable to him. On seeing Liu Buyan being angered to a certain point, she had thought that he would surely divulged by mistake and agreed to cure her. However, the result was he was able to turn around at the critical moment. But no matter, she had even more malicious talk waiting for him. Huang Yueli shut her eyes as she replied, Do you think I'm an idiot? You obviously cannot cure me and still continue telling me rubbish. Anyway, after I'm dead, you can say that it's not that you cannot cure me, it's because I didn't beg you. Liu Buyan didn't expect that he would be despised to this degree by a young lass. Her meaning behind her words was that by asking her to beg him, he was intentionally finding an excuse to hide the fact that he was not able to cure her. You can also listen on. As a number 1 divine doctor, did he need to do such a thing? But in order to rebuke her and prove that he was able to cure her, could it be that he really had to cure her? Of course, Liu Buyan was not really unwilling to help treat her. After all, this young lass was exactly the type of ladies that he admired and he had indeed not met. A young lady who made him feel the same as that person. Only this lass had yet to kneel down and beg him for help. He had yet to haughtily throw out his terms to let her be his puppet doll for an entire month. But how would he reply her? How could he reduce his terms like that? Thinking of this, he suddenly seemed to recall something as his eyes shone. Young lass, the reason why you doubt my medical skills is because you don't know who I am, right? Let me tell you, I'm the only 9-ranked pill master in the entire Soaring Heavens continent and also a 9-ranked doctor. My name is Liu Buyan. As a practitioner, you must have heard of my name. Liu Buyan. Huang Yueli gave a blank expression. Liu Buyan was secretly feeling delightful. This was known as a man's name was equivalent to a tree's shadow. Once he revealed his name, this lass instantly paused. Knew that she was wrong. Knew that she had offended a divine doctor like him and playing a joke with her own life. He finally felt that he gained some face back, and lowering his chin, he continued, "Do you now understand clearly? For a dark attributed skill like the 7-character soul extinguishment skill, once the profound energy had invaded your consciousness, it is extremely difficult to treat. I am the only one in the entire soaring heavens continent who can treat this. If I'm not willing to heal you, then only death will await you." As Liu Buyan finished what he was saying, he haughtily shifted his vision away, waiting for that lass to apprehend his meaning and kneel and beg him for help. By then, he only needed to add in a few more jeering and at the same time raise more demands. Better if she was able to accompany him for a while longer, at least 3 months. After all, he really felt that this lass was alike to that person who he had hidden at the bottom of his heart for many years. Moreover, among all the young girls whom he had met over the years, she was the most alike, not only in terms of looks, but also her tone of speaking. That witty and intelligent look were all so similar. However, Liu Buyan waited and waited, but he didn't manage to wait for Huang Yueli's begging. He held himself back, and when he finally could not hold it in any more, he turned around and realized that the little lass had already leaned against a pillow and shut her eyes, not knowing if she had fainted or fallen asleep. "You, wake up. What are you thinking about? Don't you want to live anymore? Do you even want me to treat you?" Liu Buyan's expression turned steely green, feeling that he had been greatly insulted. Huang Yueli spoke in a neither fast nor slow speed. "Oh please, uncle, if you want to brag, please don't exaggerate too much. Don't all old men who want to abduct ignorant young lasses bluff by saying he is the #1 Divine Doctor Liu Buyan? I'm telling you, I've seen a lot of scammers like you that want to cheat people for sex or their money. If I were to believe you, I would just bump into a ghost. Anyway, since I'm going to die, why should I beg you? You." At this moment, Liu Buyan almost couldn't breathe. This lass actually treated him as one of those vagrant cheaters who were devoid of conscience. After some time, he finally regained his composure and in an utterly discomfited tone he said, "Damn it. I said I'm Liu Buyan, so I am. Didn't you see this fan that I'm carrying? You can also listen on." As Liu Buyan was talking, he extracted a fan from his waist and with a swish, the fan opened up. On the face of the folding fan, besides a majestic atmospheric landscape painting, there was a massive Liu word. The character was in bold cursive calligraphy, giving off an unbridled and unrestrained feeling. Even if Huang Yueli didn't look, she knew what that was. This folding fan was one of the tokens which symbolizes Liu Buyan's statue, and in Soaring Heaven's continent, all those who had some experience would know who the owner of this folding fan was. To Huang Yueli, this folding fan was more than familiar. Because this fan was an article which she had personally refined that year, and it was a genuine 9th grade upper-level profound armament. The fan face looked like it was made out of the most ordinary scattered gold fine writing paper, but in reality, she had used the 9 dual-petal violet-leafed golden lotus in combination with various 9th grade materials, refining it for 81 days before it was refined successfully. Although it looked like it was brittle and thin, but in actual fact, it was indestructible. That was many years ago. Liu Buyan dragged Mu Chengying before her to help beseech for it. Huang Yueli seldom spent so much energy to refine a 9th grade upper-level profound armament, and at that time, she was giving Mu Chengying some face, while on the other hand, she thought that if she was injured one fine day, she would definitely require Liu Buyan's help. Hence, she accepted this task and spent quite an enormous effort on it. After this jade lotus fan's shape had been set, its power was enormous, and in combination to Liu Buyan's earth attribute profound energy, it was listed as one of the top 10 profound weapon in the Soaring Heavens continent's weaponry register. After so many years, to be able to see the jade lotus fan again, Huang Yueli was deeply moved. But she did not reveal her thoughts. Instead she said, "Isn't that just a fan? Just taking a fan and you think you can pretend to be Divine Doctor Liu? Which vagrant scammer who pretends to be Divine Doctor Liu don't have a fan in their hands? Aren't you just trying to cheat me just because I've never seen the real jade lotus fan? TSK, you cannot be more fake than this. Liu Buyan almost threw up blood. The people he normally met were basically from large sects and their potential were pretty powerful. It had been quite a number of years since he met someone with such a weak cultivation and a lass who didn't even have a discerning eye for things. She actually didn't know what was what. It's not that he was a narcissist, but someone as charming as him. Just one look and you'd know he's no ordinary man. No matter who saw him, one would probably suspect which sacred place did he hail from. Little Leah, damn, isn't this considered as narcissistic? Even after he had shown his jade lotus fan, she was still showing that disdain and contemptuous look. This was a 9th grade upper-level profound armament. To a 2nd-degree realm practitioner like her, it would be her greatest honor if she could even take a look at it from afar. But yet, she still showed that dissatisfied look. Had her eyes been smeared with *T? Liu Buyan was completely infuriated now. He stared at Huang Yueli's face as he gloomily said, "Right, since you don't believe that I can cure you, I shall intentionally cure you. Wait and see. I'll show you later if I'm the real Liu Buyan or not." Liu Buyan left these words and walked out of the room angrily in large strides, and even slamming the door as he left, letting out a bang blare. When Huang Yueli heard this rumble, her initial dizzy brain had started to hurt again. Damn, what kind of man is this? To treat a pitiful weak young lady like this? Does he still have any conscience left? You can also listen on. Huang Yueli grumbled in dissatisfaction, totally forgetting who was the one who had made Liu Buyan so furious in the first place. But this was good in a way. Although Liu Buyan's character was slightly vile, but his merit was that he was a man of his words. So whenever he had said something, he would definitely fulfill it. No matter how unruly he was in the beginning, as long as he had verbally agreed to accept patients in the end, he would use all his might to cure that patient. No matter how much effort he had to put in, he would definitely continue with his treatment until the patient is completely cured. Of course, this had nothing to do with professional ethics or out of sympathy. He was merely an arrogant person who cannot accept his name to be ruined. Huang Yueli was rest assured as she laid on the bed, resting and waiting for Liu Buyan to start his treatment for her. Only thing was she had a splitting headache and had originally been on the brink of concussion. She was relying on her willpower to hang on, and now that she was finally assured, her conscience instantly started to become blur by quite a bit. After not too long later, she had fainted once again. By the time she awoke, the sky had already darkened and apparently it was already midnight. The splitting headache seemed slightly better, at least she didn't keep seeing black spots. Huang Yueli moved her wrists and suddenly, her wrists were held down by another person. "Don't move. I've painstakingly helped you apply acupuncture, and if you move and the needles have shifted, it doesn't matter if you die, but if the news of me treating someone to her death were to spoil my reputation, are you sure you can take up this responsibility?" Liu Buyan's tone was engraved with a deep vengeance. It was apparent that he had been suppressing the flames deep within his heart. Huang Yueli had just woken up from her deep dream and realized that she had been turned face down and back facing upwards, lying on her stomach on the bed. As for Liu Buyan, no one knew when he had returned and was sitting by her bedside. The joints on his fingers was holding on to a thin golden needle, slowly pricking into her arm. Woo, so painful. A peal of intense pain can be felt, and Huang Yueli was caught unprepared, so she moaned out loud. Liu Buyan stared at her chillingly. Cry, 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 what are you crying for? Just acupuncture and such a tiny wound, you still dare to cry. As a practitioner, don't you even have the willpower to bear with this pain? Huang Yueli's lips twitched as she realized that this fellow was doing it on purpose, nursing his grudge and exacting his revenge. Looked like the things she had said to bully him earlier had made Liu Buyan mad. Before Huang Yueli could say another word, another needle pricked onto her shoulder and the pain caused the sweat on her forehead to start streaming down. This stuffy old fox. He's too underhanded. Just as the third needle was about to be pricked, she hastily said, "You think I've never done acupuncture before? To feel such pain, you've obviously pricked the wrong acupoints. Like what I said, you must be a vagrant scammer. Just this acupuncture skills alone, any roadside true doctor would have better skills than you. You still dare to impersonate Divine Doctor Liu. Do I need to impersonate? Can't you feel that the symptoms had already lessened? This Divine Doctor's acupuncture will cure all illnesses, so stop talking nonsense. Liu Buyan had never expected that his deliberate vengeful way had not only not scare her, but it brought about a fresh suspicion. Huang Yueli heard his exasperated tone and quietly laughed to herself. She replied sulkily, "Since when? I still feel giddy. Moreover, the pain I feel had already masked all other senses. Even if I don't feel giddy now, then it must be because of the pain which had diverted my attention away. You can also listen on." Has water gotten into your head? You can't feel this at all? Liu Buyan was extremely depressed as his hand in the air stopped for a short moment before the golden needle pricked into Huang Yueli's back and his movements had become much gentler than before. How about now? Is it still painful? Has your symptoms reduced? He clenched his teeth and inquired. This needle had a slight prickling pain, as though she had been bitten by a mosquito. Huang Yueli satisfactorily hooked the sides of her lips upwards and replied, "Oh, I feel it, I feel it. Indeed, I no longer feel so dizzy now. Looks like your blind guess seemed to be of some use. His highly perfected medical skills were blind guesses? Such an obvious effect was called of some use." Liu Buyan cried out in discomfort. But to prove that his medical skills were extraordinary, he was not able to poke her to death with one prick. Moreover, he couldn't bear to raise his hand against someone who had such a similar expression and look. Liu Buyan couldn't think of anything else and holding in his anger, he applied acupuncture on Huang Yueli's acupoints with the golden needles. In this entire process, not that he had never thought of using underhanded methods to implicate her. But the minute something was wrong, Huang Yueli would hurl out all sorts of suspicions at him. Such as, "Do you really know how to do treatment? Blowing your own trumpet until it's already broken? I don't believe Divine Doctor Liu don't even know how to do acupuncture. Vagrant scammer will be a vagrant scammer, admitting it won't kill you." Just listening to these alone infuriated Liu Buyan so much that his eyebrows kept twitching. He finally finished the acupuncture and left the golden needles on her for around 1 hour after Liu Buyan removed it. "So how are you now?" "Much better?" Liu Buyan asked with a black face. Huang Yueli tried sensing and replied, "I seem much better now. But when I turn my head like this, I still feel giddy and the right side of my head still feels painful." This time round, she was telling the truth. After all, she was seeing the doctor, so if she were to tell the wrong symptoms, it would affect the doctor's judgment, so it won't do any good for her. What's more, as long as Liu Buyan did not come out with any evil ideas, she wouldn't intentionally go against him because all she wanted to was to survive only. Liu Buyan squinted his eyes when he heard what she said. He stretched out his hand and once again, placed it on Huang Yueli's wrist. The dark attributed profound energy in your body had already been dispersed by a large amount. But because the treatment time was delayed for quite some time, so a substantial amount of profound energy had already invaded the inner portion of your dantian, and would not be easily eradicated. "So, that portion would never be cleared?" Huang Yueli inquired. "Of course it can be cleared." Liu Buyan stared at her in disbelief, as his words had repeatedly been doubted by this lass. But while thinking, he burst out laughing. Once this portion of dark attributed profound energy had invaded the dantian, it was indeed more difficult to cure. As time drags on, it might possibly invade your meridians and affect your future cultivation. But there is still a way to clear it fast. "Nothing can stump me, Liu Buyan. Just wait and see." As Liu Buyan spoke, he turned and walked out of the room. Huang Yueli was stunned when she saw him acting in this way. Earlier Liu Buyan appeared melancholy, sporting a look as though he wanted to kill her just with his eyes. But after a couple of breaths' time, he suddenly laughed. This was just too abnormal and weird. It was apparent that that fellow didn't have any good intentions. Could it be that he was thinking of other sinister ideas to exact revenge on her? You can also listen on. After a while, Liu Buyan returned with 2 13 to 14-year-old servant girls. He turned around and instructed the servant girls before walking to her bedside. This time, Liu Buyan's spitting anger expression no longer hung on his face. Instead, a smile hung on his face and his gaze ran from head to toe, as he presumptuously sized Huang Yueli up. His eyes undisguisedly bore the 4 words, "Up to no good." Huang Yueli took guard against him as she questioned, "What's up with you? Why are you staring at me like that?" Liu Buyan's thin lips curled upwards as he spat out these words. "Take off your clothes." Huang Yueli was shocked as she couldn't believe her ears. "What did you say?" Her delicate pale face revealed a sluggish expression, temporarily losing her black-bellied and calm smile. Liu Buyan saw her expression and his spirits instantly was lifted. He delightfully smiled as he spoke slowly, "Take off your clothes. I think I've made myself very clear. Do you need a more detailed explanation? That means to remove all your clothes, from your inner clothes to the outer ones, from top to toe, remove all your clothes, understand?" Huang Yueli's face immediately turned green. Sky Cloud City northeastern region. On an uneven mountain path, the rider dressed in black rode on a steed as it speedily flew on the narrow pathway. Very quickly, he arrived at his destination, a majestic atmospheric mountain, which was also where Li Moying's sect was. The minute he arrived at the front mountain, he was stopped by someone. The disciples standing guard spoke down against him haughtily, "Who is that? Report your name. Do you know where this place is? How dare you rush headlong to our sect's main door?" His attitude was extremely impolite, but disciples from a large sect were often arrogant, and there was no exception even if he was just an outer disciple who stood guard outside the door. The black-robed rider got off the horse and passed a token ring to the outer disciple. "Acting on my master's orders, I'm returning to the sect." His expression was solemn as he spoke calmly. The outer disciple was originally in a lazy attitude, but the minute he saw the token ring, his hand trembled and almost dropped the token ring onto the ground. Following that, he immediately adjusted his posture and stood pencil straight. He held the token ring with both hands and delivered it to the black-robed rider's hand. "So you're Sir Mo Yi. It's been hard on you to have completed your tasks while outside. Please enter inside quickly, this way please." As Li Moying's subordinate, Mo Yi wasn't a nobody in the sect. He was also a well-known figure among the inner disciples and had passed various tests and handled the bodyguard position before he became the commander of the shadow guards. He kept his token ring and asked the disciple standing guard, "Where is young sect master now?" The doorkeeper disciple hurriedly replied, My position is lowly here, so I'm not sure of young sect master's movements. But I heard that the competition with West Sky region is starting soon, so all direct disciples are currently in closed-door cultivation at the Hind Mountain, so young sect master should be there too." When Mo Yi heard that, he appeared stunned, instinctively feeling something was amiss. Li Moying sent an urgent mail to ask him to return to the sect in the shortest time possible. He had thought something major was happening in the sect which could have endangered Li Moying's safety. Because of that, he rushed back burning with anxiety, and in the several days of his journey, a few fourth-grade dark snow piebald horses had died from tiredness, which was why he was able to reach the sect in such a short amount of time. But it looked like nothing had happened in the sect at all. You can also listen on. A suspicion flashed past Mo Yi's head. His master naturally had his own reason to summon him back, and as his subordinate, the only thing he needed to do was to listen to his commands. Mo Yi had been thinking in this way as he nodded and replied, "Thank you." He led his horses to the doorkeeper disciple, and following that, he prepared to head towards the rear mountain and report to Li Moying. Who knew, he had just taken a few steps when he heard a burst of disturbance coming from the main gate, and all the doorkeeper disciples had rushed towards the door. Quite a number of people had gathered along the pathway leading to the main door. Mo Yi turned his head around questioningly. Right in the sky at the main door, multicolored clouds tinged with sunset hues filled the horizon. And amidst the dazzling radiance, a huge, snow condor gradually descended onto the ground. All the feathers on this snow condor were not tinged with any other colors. It was as white as the unmeltable icicles on the top of the snow mountain, and its body size was enormous. When it spread out its wings, it measured as long as 20 meters. Not only did it had strong power, it also looked extravagant and beautiful. After the snow condor steadied itself on the ground, a bunch of outer disciples gathered around and respectfully queued up into a line to pay their respects. On the back of the snow condor alighted a graceful, peerless beauty. She was dressed in a crimson long dress which highlighted her looks, and with her excelling temperament, slender swaying frame, she resembled an angel who had descended onto the mortal world. In many people's eyes, she was indeed a fairy from the 9 skies. After she descended the snow condor, without giving those surrounding her a glance, she walked past the white jade pathway and walked through the main door. Her chin was raised upwards in the entire journey, displaying an aloof and arrogant look. However, in the eyes of the outer disciples, they were head over heels for her, and even after she had left for quite a distance, they were still in a daze in their original spots. Moyi turned around and shot one glance, understanding clearly in his mind. There could only be one person who would display such an extravagant entrance just entering the main door. That would be the precious eldest young miss of the sect master, Murong Fei. Eldest young Miss Murong was born with a golden spoon in her mouth. Not only did she have gorgeous looks, her innate gifts were also outstanding, and she was an famous, peerless beauty in the South Sky region. In everyone's eyes, she was also thought to be well matched for Li Moying. Moyi had once believed that this eldest young Miss Murong would eventually become his future mistress. But after he had met Huang Yueli on the last trip back to South Yu Kingdom, he already knew what kind of lady did his master like. This aloof and arrogant eldest young Miss Murong was not his master's cup of tea. So Moyi didn't bother to give another look and continued on his way towards the mountain pathway, only thinking to grasp tight on the timing and report to Li Moying earlier. But just at this moment, a female voice was heard from his back. The person in front, stop for a moment. Although this voice sounded melodious, but it contained a sense of arrogant prestige in it. Moyi's brows creased, but he halted his footsteps, turned around and lowered his head to pay respect to the person who had called out. Eldest young Miss Murong. Murong Fei walked in front of him and her eyes flashed past a strict, cold glint. This Moyi. His actions were pretty hasty. The minute he received the forged letter she had written, he immediately set forth to return and had only used 3 days to reach the sect. Even though she took a ride in the soaring cloud snow condor, she almost couldn't catch up with him. However, to be able to meet here meant heavens was also on her side. Murong Fei hid the smile in the corner of her lips and her gaze fell onto Moyi as she asked frostily, "Who are you? Why didn't you take your initiative and pay your respects to me when you saw me earlier? You can also listen on." Moyi knew that Murong Fei was extremely particular to stay on her dignity and was someone who was particular about ostentation and extravagance. Those disciples whose status were much lower would be required to pay their respects to her, otherwise they would be secretly marked by her. He hurriedly replied, "Please be appeased, eldest young miss. I am Moyi and I have a huge responsibility now to report to my master urgently, so I didn't notice what had happened earlier at the main door. If I had offended you in any way, I hope eldest young miss don't take it to heart." Murong Fei raised her eyebrows and replied, "Your master?" "You are," Moyi replied, "I am one of young sect master's shadow guard." Murong Fei had intentionally asked him on purpose, so she displayed an enlightened look as she nodded and continued, "Yes, no wonder I find you familiar. So you are one of Moying's guards." "That's right. I had just returned from outside earlier and as master had urgently recalled me, I was in a hurry to report to him at the rear mountain, so I beseech eldest young miss to allow me to leave for now." Moyi heaved a sigh of relief, thinking that he had got past this hurdle for now. Although Murong Fei's character was cold and aloof, but towards Li Moying, she had always tried to get into his good books. So with this in mind, she was much tolerant towards the subordinates under Li Moying and had never made things difficult for them. But this round, things were not as what Moyi had predicted. When Murong Fei heard what he said, she did not let him go off as what she did in the past, but she replied, "Senior brother is currently in closed-door cultivation at the rear mountain, preparing for the tournament which will be held 7 days later. This is the biggest event that is happening in our sect for now, so how can you go and disturb him now? Whatever matter you have, wait until the tournament is over." She turned around and looked at her own guards. "You guys bring Protector Moyi to the room on the mountainside to rest and treat him well. This person here is the most popular person around your young sect master. Murong Fei's guards immediately passionately welcomed him. Senior brother Mo, this way please. Mo Yi hastily replied, No. Rest time isn't urgent. Eldest young miss, I really have urgent matters to meet with my master, and he was the one who used the white-breasted falcon to deliver the urgent mail to recall me, so he must have something very urgent. Even if he is in closed-door cultivation, he will definitely come out and meet me, so I must rush over immediately. Murong Fei creased her brows and replied coldly, it was rumored that the people around senior brother have outstanding cultivations and were all dependable and reliable. But how come you don't seem to understand the severity of this matter? The tournament is the biggest event that is happening in the sect now, and senior brother holds the hope for the entire sect. How can he be disturbed during his closed-door cultivation? If this disturbance causes damages to his cultivation, are you going to be accountable for it? Mo Yi was lectured till his face turned pale and his head hung low. But he was still reluctant to give up and immediately replied, Eldest young miss, please be appeased. I naturally understand the point you are trying to put across, but this is the first time Master had sent out such an urgent mail to recall me, so he must have something major cropping up. I must go and meet him now. Enough. Why can't you be more sensible? Senior brother is in the sect and there are so many fellow disciples around him, so if he really met with any trouble, who wouldn't be of help? Must he really wait for you to do it? Besides that, I have been meeting senior brother every day for the past few days and he had been in a pretty good mood. He doesn't look like he had anything urgent to attend to. But, that letter, Mo Yi didn't want to rebuke Murong Fei, but when he recalled the illegible handwriting and a few hasty sentences, it made him uptight once more. Murong Fei had not expected him to be so uncooperative and her tone started to be tinged with impatience. You can also listen on. What? Did you think that anyone could hurt senior brother in the sect? Mo Yi hurriedly shook his head. No, it's not like that. I had never thought of it in this way, he tried to explain. However, Murong Fei didn't wait for him to finish before she cut him off again. Since that's the case, then don't disturb senior brother. Mo Yi frowned and a sense of uncertainty appeared at the back of his head, not understanding why Murong Fei must stop him from meeting Li Moying. Murong Fei saw his strange expression and realized that her attitude seemed slightly offhand and immediately relaxed her tone by adding a few more words of explanation. I had said these was all for the consideration of the sect. But I can understand your feelings as well. Why not we do it in this way, you follow my guards to rest up in the room first. As for your return, I'll inform senior brother. If he wishes to meet up with you, he will naturally ask someone to summon you. After Mo Yi heard this, he thought carefully for a moment and felt that it made sense. If Li Moying had something urgent to look for him, even if he don't call on him, Li Moying would also ask someone to check on his whereabouts, and if it's nothing urgent, he would naturally not want to meet anyone while he's in closed-door cultivation. With Murong Fei passing the word, it would be better than him rashly disturbing his master. With he nodded his head and replied, then I will have to trouble eldest young miss. Mo Yi following Murong Fei's guards and making a turn, he made his way towards another mountain pathway. Murong Fei let out a frosty smile upon seeing his disappearing silhouette. She was going to meet Li Moying, but she would absolutely not remind Li Moying about Mo Yi's return. If she were to allow them to meet, then the fact that she had sent the assassin to kill that lass would be exposed. She was worried that Zhuo Fangping would not be able to find an opportunity to take action, so she wanted to make more time for him so that he would be able to ensure things go on without an flaw. As for that summoning letter, it was not even from Li Moying, so even if Mo Yi waited till the end of time, Li Moying would not possibly summon for him. When Mo Yi finally realized something was wrong, that wretched lass's bones might have already turned to ashes. As Murong Fei delightfully thought of these, the smile on her lips grew wider. She held out her hand. Little butterfly, serve the Millennium Snow Lotus porridge which I had made earlier and follow me closely. I am going to the rear mountain to meet with senior brother. In the deep end of the forest. A little courtyard laid within. Huang Yueli subconsciously held the blanket in front of her chest tightly as she stared chillingly at the man in front of her. Those words that Liu Buyan had said earlier simply sounded too dubious. What, take it all off, remove cleanly? Would an honorable person even use such words? Could it be that he was really intending to lay his hands on her? Speaking of this, Liu Buyan helmed the reputation of the #1 playboy in the South Sky region, and even if she didn't feel there was any major problem with Liu Buyan in her past life, but that could only be because she was Liu Buyan's best friend's sweetheart. As the saying goes, you cannot fool around with your friend's wife. So perhaps Liu Buyan was courteous to her because of this. But now, he didn't know her identity, and perhaps he really had some warped thinking in his mind. Liu Buyan looked at her uptight expression, and instantly his spirits was lifted. This irritating young lass, hadn't she not shown him any respect earlier and even disrespect his dignity? How about now? Ha 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 ha, he didn't believe that he cannot cure this flat-chested young lass at all. You can also listen on. Thinking of this, Liu Buyan opened his mouth once more. Why? Didn't hear me clearly? Still not going to undress? Oh, right, I understand now. You must still be suffering from concussion and feeling faint, so you don't have the energy to undress. I've wronged you. No matter, let me help you, undressing or the likes, I'm the expert in this. He protruded his cheeks and moved closer with an ambiguous expression, seemingly like he needed a good spanking. Huang Yueli's mouth started to twitch. If it hadn't been for lethargy and all the profound armaments she had were exhausted during the battle with Zhuo Fangping, she would have thrown a thunder flame ball on Liu Buyan's face long ago. Really wasted to have such a handsome face. His character really seemed like it needed a spanking and looked especially wretched. Liu Buyan stretched out his hand to snatch the blanket covering her. As Huang Yueli prepared to shoot her mouth off at him, suddenly a creak tilde sound was heard as the room door was opened from the outside. Master, the items you require have been prepared tilde. 4 serving maids entered the room and they were talking while walking in. The minute they entered the room, the scene they saw was 2 people huddling tightly at the corner of the bedside. The few of them immediately stopped in their tracks and using their hands to cover their mouths, they gave an astonished and vexed expression. Huang Yueli's mouth started twitching again. From the expressions of those serving maids, without a doubt, they had mistaken her and Liu Buyan, the unprincipled one, were having some illicit affair. Only heavens knew that she had no interest in this sully butterfly at all. Liu Buyan smiled as he raised his chin and raising his brow, that expression looking contented. Huang Yueli turned her face around with a chilly expression, not giving him a hoot. Liu Buyan turned around and when he faced the serving maids, the smile on his face instantly disappeared into thin air. Who told you that you could enter the guest's room without knocking on the door? Don't you even have any manners? Although Liu Buyan usually despised worldly conventions, but he was after all a 9th-degree realm expert, and when his stern face was turned on, that imposing manner was definitely extraordinary. The serving maids turned pale with fright and apologized profusely. Master, please be appeased. Chinga is at fault. Please mete out punishment to me. Liu Buyan replied, go to the in-charge and receive your punishment by yourself. Leave the things and you can go. The few serving maids were scared out of their wits and hurriedly left the items before running out of the room. Huang Yueli turned to take a look and found that the serving maids had brought in a huge bathtub. It was as tall as one man's height and the width was so large that it could seat 2 people with more space to spare. Beside the bathtub were various grades of medicinal herbs. Other than these, there were several pails of boiling hot water. Huang Yueli instantly understood what was going on. Liu Buyan had wanted to let her soak in a medicinal bath to expel the dark attributed profound energy within her. This was a commonly used treatment and Huang Yueli had encountered this plenty of times. If it hadn't been for Liu Buyan who had put it so ambiguously to her in an attempt to mislead her, she would have thought of this long ago. On seeing the bathtub, Huang Yueli felt relieved and pulling the blanket aside, she sat up. She was still experiencing obvious dizziness, so she didn't dare to move too quickly. She placed one hand against the railing of the bed and the other held onto the mattress as she slowly arose. When Liu Buyan saw what she was doing, he held onto her shoulder and steadied her swaying body. Come on, aren't you feeling dizzy? Don't push yourself too hard. Let me help you along the way. I can also help you undress directly. You really can't find such a good-hearted doctor like me nowadays. You can also listen on. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.